Hi, this is Parvin Dabas, and welcome to the MMA India Show. On today's episode, we have a lot of interesting chats lined up. We're going to be talking with Cole Miller, whose fight at October 15th, the UFC event, Fight Night in Manila, was rescheduled to December 17th, and he's recently had a lot of things to say about the UFC. So we're going to be chatting with him, and we will also be chatting with Gurdarshan Mangat, aka Saint Lion, who just won his fight at Brave 2. And it was a really exciting win. We're excited to be talking to him, who's an upcoming Indian MMA star based in Canada. We are also going to be chatting with Akhilesh, Gannavarapu, and Taman Preet Singh about the Ultimate Fighter finale, which happened, and doing the post match review. So let's get started. So, of course, you've caused a big furore with your recent comments, and you recently said you might have to join Starbucks. Now, did you say that in the heat of the moment, or do you still stand by what you said?
I didn't mean them specifically, but yeah, I mean what I said. I mean if a company clearly shows that they don't really respect me and don't want me fighting for them, then why would I want to fight for them? You know what I'm saying? So it kind of just put a bad taste in my mouth for fighting in general. So just move on, and go do something else.
So I wanted to, initially ask you about BJ Penn as well, because ever since he said he was going to return, he kind of he was supposed to fight you before earlier this year, but that didn't happen, and the same thing happened with the event in Asia. So would you put a little blame on the fighter as well? Just because it was built around BJ Penn and the aura of BJ Penn returning to MMA.
Yeah, but no, I wouldn't put the blame on BJ. I mean, like, BJ had to pull out. BJ had to pull out. But that being said, that's not his fault, and the repercussions that happened thereafter are not his fault. You see what I'm saying? Like, yeah. So no, it's there's no blame on BJ for what all happened.
But should there be a greater responsibility on a fighter? When he's supposed to fight. All right, if a fighter pulls out once, we can understand. But if someone like BJ Penn, who has been here, who's done that, a legend in the business, when someone like that cancels back-to-back fights, will there be a point where the fighter has to take responsibility for his actions as well?
Yeah, if his actions were negligent, but you don't know why he pulled out. I don't know why he pulled out. Like, if a fighter's injured, what do you want him to do? Get in there and put his life at more risk? You know what I'm saying? Like that. So no, I mean, he's not liable. He's not responsible unless his reason for pulling out was due to negligence of some kind. In which case, if that was the case, I'm sure the UFC would be allowed to do something like sue or at least suspend him for a prolonged period of time. And the fact that neither of those things happened proved that his actions weren't negligent. And he probably just got injured. I mean, we train fucking hard. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And all those other fighters were training hard too. But no, there's no blame at BJ. I mean, maybe the event was canceled because they couldn't find a suitable main event, and that's understandable. But that's none of the remaining fighters' faults.
You've recently said it's your last fight on the contract. Now, obviously, the statements that have been made, which are true, which wouldn't be good though for negotiating after this. Now, what do you have to say about that, and also about the association which has just formed? Do you think it will help in making sure that fighters don't have to face these kind of situations, which you've very clearly you said that you had to have a 9-week camp, and you still paid about 1/3 of the money, the show money, and now you got to go into another camp and fight again. So you've got 2 camps, but you're being paid for 1. So do you think the association can help in avoiding such situations in future?
Ultimately, it can help. Yeah, if an association of some kind is formed and pushes for more benefits and amenities for fighters, then this type of thing can for sure be prevented. If a union formed as well, it kind of depends on if the union forms or if an association is going to be the one, looking out for the fighters. But regardless of whether it's an association or a union, these are the types of things that will, all fighters should be protected. I don't think that the individual fighter should have to specify this in their negotiations, where one fighter can maybe have, like a prorated amount once a bout is signed, leading up to a camp where they've got guaranteed money if they're injured or something. But another fighter who maybe doesn't have a manager or a background in business negotiation where they negotiate these things, that's the type of thing that all fighters should have, and that's the type of thing that like a union or an association would be able to implement for all fighters. So as far as that's like ethical treatment. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that has anything to even do with this fighter should get it or that fighter should get it. I think that that's just like ethically right for all fighters. Like I said, like if I put all that time in on a training camp and it's not my fault, you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm not the one that got injured. I'm not the one pulled out. They're the one that canceled the event. Then why should I be the one liable for all the expense?
Now, so have you reached out to the association in any way? Do you want to be a part of that?
I can't say for sure that I want to be a part of it yet. I have reached out. I have a lot of questions, and I encourage all other fighters to answer or ask any questions that they need answered, and to form their own educated opinion based on the verification of any answers that you get from your questions.
Right. I want to roll back to this, in just a moment. But I also wanted to talk about your upcoming fight, which was, originally supposed to go down in Manila before. You're gonna fight Hirota, and most of these Japanese fighters, Hirota just fought once in the UFC, but most of these Japanese fighters are really good when it comes down to judo, when it comes down to the ground game in general. So how do you approach the fight? Do you see the tapes of his previous fights? How do you go about it?
Well, Hirota's fought 3 times in the UFC,
Okay.
and but I mean, yeah, his footage is out there, so I'm able just to find the footage and do the research and see what kind of fighter he is. But I mean, I don't put too much stock in it because I mean, look at his last fight. When was that? Like over a year ago, right?
A year ago, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure that he's gotten, a lot better in a year. But I just look at the footage so I can kind of see how his movement is and if he has any kind of like patterns in previous fights for what he likes to throw. But when you've got like a whole year between fights, I mean, unless he's been like laid up, in a body cast for a year, then I could put a lot of stock in the video. But I mean, fighters change in a year.
Now,
Right.
UFC has recently, of course, come under new management. Now, did you hope things would improve with the new management? And what's the actual ground reality? Because all of this is still happening with the new management. But do you think it's taking them time, to take control? What's your opinion about, do you think the new management will actually improve things?
I mean, what do you think? It doesn't look like it.
But that's what I mean. But do you think it'll still take them time to start taking hold of things, because they're still in the process of firing certain people, hiring new people? So do you think it's a transition phase?
I mean, it's definitely a transition phase, but it's a transition into what?
Yeah.
I mean, like when these guys cancel an event and they go, how can we minimize our losses on a specific event? Oh, I know how we'll minimize it. We'll cut costs with the fighters. That's the last people that you should cut the costs in. You should eat it on the back end of, whatever it is that they spent, like their advertisement, or if they had to. I don't know all the back end stuff on how much they spent on that type of thing, or securing a venue, or flights that they had already. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's like not the fighters aren't the ones that should be the expense.
Yeah.
That's not how you cut the costs. You treat them, I'm going to say employees, even though we're independent contractors, and how convenient is that? we're the ones that are responsible for eating that. I'm the one responsible for getting paid like $500 profit for leaving my son for 9 weeks, only to have to go do it again. So I'll have seen my son 1 month in 5 months. So there's cost to that too. There's not just like a financial cost. And I'm fine with leaving my son's going to be 2, and I'll have missed a year of his life already. And you know what? I'm fine with that as long as the sacrifice that I make, he's able to reap the benefits of that said sacrifice. You know what I'm saying? But like when I'm making all this sacrifice and then I come home and my son's not getting a better quality of life because I'm getting, peanuts for all this hard training that I'm doing. And it's not even about also having to put in the second training camp for the price of one, which it is about that. But what if I would have gotten injured in the second training camp? And I can't even say that if I have gotten injured or not. But if that was something that happened, I have to fight. I have to fight now. You see what I'm saying? I have to go into that because I didn't get compensated for the hard work that I put in the breaking down my body and my mind for the first camp. So this thing goes so much further than most people think.
So do you feel things were better under the Fertitta brothers?
I never had a situation like this happen under the Fertitta brothers. This type of thing did happen under when they were under that ownership. It happened in between 2008 and 2010. I can't recall. It was an event in Canada that got canceled, and they basically took all those fighters and they put them on this show in Atlanta, and all these people were in Atlanta, Georgia, and there was a bunch of Canadian fighters on it. It was kind of funny. I just can't recall what event that was, but that has happened. And to my knowledge, some of the fighters were compensated with show and win, and some of the fighters were compensated with show. You see it and how do they choose? How do they play these favorites? Like, if you got a big enough social media following and enough people that'll get pissed, then you can get your show and your win money. But if you're just some guy coming in, you're just going to get your show. You see what I'm saying? Like, how is this stuff selected?
Right. Now, Cole, if I may ask, because this is something that all the fighters, even in India, have asked me before, if they want to go to the United States and fight an organization like the UFC or one of the big couple of organizations, Bellator or any such promotion, what is the amount of money that you have to put between training camps, between moving to a place where your camp is closer and paying for your cornerman for the fight? How much does it all come down to in the end for a fighter?
I spent, I think, like $9,300 on this last training camp. The last training camp, the last one, not this one, the last one. So but that's going to be on the fighter. Like, do you got a bunch of sponsors? Do you got a car situation taken care of when you come over here? Do you have a living space taken care of when you come over here? Because I don't live in South Florida anymore. I did, down here at American Top Team. But now I live in Georgia and I commute for just training camp. So these are things that you got to ask yourself. Do you have all the proper equipment that you need? Are you going to have to come out of your pocket on all that? I do all that. And now I formed a corporation, which athletes should do, so that way you can deduct the expenses that you are legally allowed to be doing, and you owe it to yourself to be doing that too. But I pay for all this.
Right now, since you the sponsors about the sponsors, how big of an impact has it been for you personally? Now that Reebok is the official sponsor, how does a fighter make money from his sponsors anymore?
For me, it makes an impact sometimes, and it doesn't make an impact to others. Like, for instance, like when I was on the co-main with fighting Max Holloway, it would have made a real big difference to them. But I think since I came out with these comments, they got me opening up the Fight Pass first fight of the night. You know what I'm saying? So. In this type of situation, I probably make more money with the Reebok, but it's not going to be like that for all fighters because I've been here for 10 fucking years. You know what I'm saying? So I'm in the top top tier. I'm either at the 15 or the 20,000 for this next fight. I don't know, but a lot of these fighters coming in, you're going to be making 2,500. So those fighters are probably all affected. I don't think I've ever made less than that, so I don't know. But, if you're going to be making $2,500 coming in, on the Reebok sponsorship, you need to be hustling on your social media. You get somebody behind you. Fighters need to be getting when I came up in the game, I was 19 and this is 2003, there wasn't all this social media, and social media wasn't a thing for you to monetize or build your brand. I've been hearing that term for 10 years. I still don't know what that even means. I don't think anybody knows what it means. It's just something that you say, but you need to get a team of people behind you to help you with this type of thing, because I haven't really seen any money.
Right.
Do you have any regrets about not being able to fight against Conor McGregor? And what's your opinion of his winning 2 belts?
You can't have a regret about your thumb nearly snapping off. Okay. I mean, it happened. I mean, I would have liked to have fought him, especially because in 2013 or 14, he wasn't what he is right now, and he himself has even admitted, unless you have some size and some length on him.
That's what I was going to ask.
Beat him. I was saying the same thing already in 2014, that anybody with any kind of reach and a knowledge of boxing is going to beat him, because he's the one that is always relying on reach. He's the one always relying on making the fighters chase him, and a fighter with reach. Who's the only fighter with reach that he's faced?
Nate Diaz.
Nate Diaz. All right. So a couple years later, he does exactly what I said would happen to him when this type of thing happens. And now it's by Conor's own admission. It's so subtle, people don't really pay attention to it. But it's I was saying this 3 years ago, and he just admitted it to the world, But no, I don't have any. I can't regret that I was prepping for him. My thumb nearly snapped off. I mean, that's just what it is. But yeah, I do wish that it would not have happened. Yeah. I didn't want to go 13 months without fighting,
Right.
Any plans of returning to baseball?
No.
Okay.
Right.
No.
Now, I also wanted to ask, since you're a veteran in the UFC, as you said, you've been fighting in the promotion for nearly 10 years now. But, if something like this is happening to you, who has fought in the UFC for so long, how do the other fighters work, or how does it work with the other fighters when it comes down to sponsorships, especially when, as you said, people who are probably on the prelims, or who are opening the prelims show, or the FS1 prelims, how does the entire thing work for a fighter who just entered the UFC?
I think you get 2,500, right? You guys, I don't know. I never had a first fight coming in for Reebok. I don't know. Is it 5,000 or 2,500? I don't know.
I think it's
no. So what I mean is,
2,500.
Yeah, what I mean is, how does it impact a fighter if an event is cancelled? If you have a new guy who is in your shoes, who has spent about $900 or $9,000 rather. How does someone like that make any money?
I mean, you gotta get ready to fight and win, I guess. I mean, I'm pretty decent with my money, I guess. I can make it stretch, because if you look back in my activity level, they got me fighting every 10 months or some bullshit like that. I want to go 10 months without fighting? No.
So are you already thinking of joining another fight organization, since you're not?
Nope. Not interested in fighting.
You're not interested?
At all.
Not at all after this fight?
Nope.
Now, I also wanted.
Now, if the UFC wanted to, come correct and make things right, cool. People mess up. And you can be a forgiving person and give somebody a second chance. And if UFC wanted to come correct on this, cool. And if they want to, slam the door so it hits me in the ass on the way out, then I don't have any interest in fighting for anybody. Like if you had given like 6 surgeries to this game and bled all over that canvas, and help make what it is right now, would you want to keep doing it?
Right. I have two questions regarding this. One, we have already talked about associations. So there are 3 associations or unions, however you look at it now, with MMA now coming in, and you have the PFA and the MMAFA. So how do you think these associations or unions would impact a fighter? I mean, how do you think these unions need to go about to help a fighter? That is one. The other thing is, you just said that you're not interested in fighting anymore. So do you have something to fall back on as a fighter, as a professional fighter who has dedicated his life to fighting? Is there a second career or probably something else that you can fall back to?
Maybe for a lot of these guys that come in with college degrees or something like that, they probably were already working a job, but I've been only fighting. But I want to have my own martial arts academy. I mean, this was something I was going to be opening like 6 months ago, but they kept stringing me along. So, you're going to fight, you're going to fight, you're going to fight. So I had to put a hold on that. And all the money that I had set aside to start that is all gone now because I've been trying to make it to live till these fools will let me fight. So I'll just be taking the capital from this next fight, just opening my own academy, which was already the plan that I've been wanting to do for 10 years. I always knew that I wanted to be an instructor and help people, learn self-defense and martial arts and, try to help better their lives, in all aspects any way I can. So that's what I'm going to do. But these other guys, a lot of them don't have the technical knowledge to be a fighter. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe like they're real good athletes or they're real fast or they've got a wrestling background or something like that. I'm a first degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I go around, I'll teach seminars and stuff like that. I've been teaching martial arts for 10 years. That's something that I've always wanted to do, but a lot of these guys, they can't do that.
Right. Now the other part, what do you think the unions need to do to help these fighters at this point?
They need to help fighters. More money. Everybody wants more money, right? You want more money. Everybody always wants more money. It's a healthy thing to want more, to want to have a better life, to strive for, perfection in all aspects of everything that you do, and like a union or association would be able to negotiate fighters to get higher pay, of course, but just like more ethical treatment. Like the fact that I requested a meeting was just flat out denied. I mean, like with no reason or anything, and they didn't even want to like hear my side of the story. I mean, that's disgusting. That's just like unethical treatment. So they could help with just the overall treatment of athletes too, and post-career amenities is a big deal. These fighters that are out there that came up in like the 90s and the early 2000s that have been retired for a while, they helped get the sport to what it was when I got in, and now I help get the sport to what it is now, and that these guys that are in the sport now will help get it to what it will be. So like compensating these athletes with like post-career health care for them and their families, because a lot of these fighters won't be able to walk right, won't be able to talk right, won't be able to think for themselves when they're later in life. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a lot of people want to be like, these fighters knew what they were getting into, but they need to say the same thing like this. Man, these fighters knew what they were getting into. Like with a little more reverence and respect instead of like shitting all over us. You need to be kind of like, man, these guys, they paid their dues and it's time for them to be taken care of. Get us some post-career health care, get us some pensions, like a monthly pension once we reach a certain age, like 45 or something like that for the rest of our lives. Just like all other major sports organizations have. This isn't like some crazy request. The NFL, the MLB, the NHL, the NBA, all these guys do this. All of them.
Right. Now, I also wanted to ask you, did UFC, because you're a big name, we have fought in the UFC for 10 years. Did anyone from the management even talk about a contract extension with you after your fight? I mean, since you're going
Nope.
down with your last fight. Okay.
Nope. No, because my last fight, I didn't even want to take that fight. I was sitting in bed, sick. They asked if I'd fight BJ Penn on 20 days notice, and I was like, yeah, sure. Just make sure that I can get like no cut clause. Like no matter what happens in the fight, no matter how bad I, shit the bed and how bad I suck, that I'll get like another chance. You know what I'm saying? And I did that fight, and then right after that fight, I said, cool. I'm gonna start getting back to work. And I didn't even want to take the fight with Bruce Leroy. It's like that guy, he's really good, and you got a guy with like a style like that, you got to have more than 10 days to prepare for, a guy with that style. But I was like, oh man, I already committed to this fight, and of course, because I already gone 10 months or whatever, or 7 months without fighting, and I got show money for that no contest in the fight prior to that. I kind of felt like I had to, and so then I just said, hey, I need a full 8 weeks for the next camp. And they were like, okay, we heard what you said about you needing 8 weeks because, it's important that I get a win, so I can provide for my family and secure my spot in the organization. And they're like, you want to fight Andre Fili in 12 days? And I was like, no, but I will if I can get another guaranteed no cut. And they were like, nope, can't guarantee you that. And so I was like, they showed their cards right there, what they thought of me, So I was like, then no, I'm not jumping in this fight when I just said to you yesterday, I need 8 weeks for a fight. And you asked me to fight 12 days later. It's crazy.
Right. Parvin, do you have any
No,
question?
I've got more or less everything covered. So, thank you so much, Cole, for speaking to us. And
yep, you got it.
And we really hope the situation with the UFC fighters improves, and somebody there does start thinking with some sense and some, because that's what it is basically, right? It's common sense. It's like the fighters are the guys who make the organization, and if you're not going to take care of them, what else is there? So we really hope somebody starts thinking clearly, and the situation improves for everybody. And we really hope the association helps towards that, I guess, because that's the only way we really see that everybody clubbing together and dealing with it together.
I appreciate it. And just the simple fact that they're even just raising these questions and concerns is already helping.
All right. Thank you once again, Cole. We'll talk to you again soon.
You guys got it. Spread the word.
You will.
Sure. Thank you once again.
Take care.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Mm-hmm.
So, first of all, can you tell us a little about your upbringing? Have you always been in Vancouver? Were you born in Canada, or were you born in India and you moved? And also, about your journey from being an accountant to a fighter.
Okay. I was born up north from Vancouver in a small town. I was raised under Indian values, always from the first day, and I was always taught to, go out there, go to school, get a good career. I was well on my way to become an accountant, and moved up to Vancouver here on full scholarships. And from there, I found this crazy world of mixed martial arts, and from there, I tried it, and it was the hardest thing I ever did. I didn't know how to fight. I didn't know how to throw a punch or anything. I didn't know how to do any of it, like literally 8 years ago. And from there, it was just something was so hard about it. And I realized at that point that anytime anything ever got hard, I always walk away from it. I would look for an easy path in life. And I realized in life, to be good at anything, to be known for anything, nothing comes easy. And from there, I just did it one day at a time. I learned class by class. People always ask me what my background is. I have no background in mixed martial arts. I was a mixed martial artist from the first day I started. And that's how I built myself up from it.
Well, we have to say it doesn't seem like it. So you've done a great job with a late start.
And it was just my approach. It's my approach is how I approach school, and that's what made it different. Was I've sat through so many lectures and so many accounting lectures, so many economic lectures, taking hundreds and hundreds of notes, trying to understand formulas, trying to understand all these things. And I kind of took that same mindset and approached mixed martial arts in that way. I used to pull up YouTube videos of old UFC fights and just study them. I didn't really know what I was studying or what I was trying to understand or how to throw a proper jab or a kick or how to time out a good takedown or far from a submission of any kind. But I just try to make it understandable for myself. So from there, I pieced it together.
I have to ask you, how did your parents take it? Because we all know how Indian parents can be, especially when you live abroad. I think they hold on to our values even more than they do in India. So wasn't there a bit of like fighter banega, kya karega fighter banke? Was there any of that, or how was the?
Oh yeah, my parents they're traditional Indian parents.
Yeah.
They wanted me to be married by the age of 22. I should have had about 3-4 kids by now.
Yeah.
Should have had a good I should have been working a salary job, working my way up the corporate ladder. This was far from their plans that they had for their son. So I first told them this. They thought it was just kind of a hobby, and they know that accounting was a very tough course I was taking out here. The school I was going to was a very hard school to become an accountant at. So they thought maybe I used to work out here and there back home. Here the scheduling was so tough that I never got time to do it. So they thought maybe I was just trying to do something like that. But they didn't know how much of an obsession mixed martial arts became. And so when I called them and I told them, listen, this is kind of what I want to do. My parents were ready to kind of just come down here and kind of sort me out real quick.
Yeah, I can imagine. They must have wanted to slap the shit out of you. Slap it out of you.
Basically, that's exactly it, right? So but a good lesson that my dad always taught me was you don't earn respect by talking about something, you earn respect by doing it. So and the thing is, throughout my life, I believe that the reason that my parents didn't respect it from the start is because I said a lot of things that I said I was going to do and never follow through with them. Business plans, certain things I want to do. So I can't blame them for not believing in it right from the start. I had to earn it by training hard, by them seeing that passion, by them seeing the sacrifice, and then going into a real fight in front of them and surviving it.
So they've been to some of your fights? Have they been to some of your fights?
Yeah, when they're local, they come out to them, but my mom, she can't watch them. She covers her eyes. She's praying to the gods, and that's usually what she's doing the entire time. Even for this one, my fiance, my mom, everybody, they were at the temple. Her parents were at the temple. We're traditional people out here, so that's how they cope with it. But my dad thought that the first fight I would go into, I would learn my lesson and get right back on the path of accounting. And what happened in that fight was it was a local tournament. It was one of those amateur tournaments. So what happened was on the very first punch, I got my nose broken. Like I said, I didn't even know how to fight. I came down with my hands down, threw a punch, but I didn't get out of the way of the other punch. And I was bleeding everywhere. But the ref is like, do you want to stop? My dad was sure I would have. But I fought through that entire tournament. I fought 3 more guys, won the gold medal, and my grandpa was there too. And my grandpa's like, if you ever stop him from doing this, you're going to be hearing from me. I saw so much heart there. And from there, I just kind of built it over time. We still have those struggles when things go when things go unstable. But I've proven it over and over. I told him I'd go fight in India. I did that. I told him I'd go do this. I told him that I would wave India's flag and represent his land. And I've done all that. I've kept those promises through mixed martial arts.
Awesome. Now, can you tell us a little about your time at the SFL Super Fight League?
Well, the one big fight that I did with SFL was in India.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It was a dream come true. It was kind of it was a dream come true. It went to New Delhi and didn't realize how much media was really around this and how much press was around us. We were kings of that city. We were kings of India.
Are you talking about the fight with the Chinese fighter?
Yeah. This was that one.
Lee Kong,
So at that time I was only 2-0.
Okay.
So I was still fresh in the game at that point. I was 2-0 at that time, and just to go from like the local shows I was doing here, where there's about 400 or 500 people, and after you win, you you hang out with people, like nothing goes crazy. When I won there was high security. People were trying to break into my change room, trying to get pictures. Like the fan presence was just unreal. I loved it. I loved it. It motivated me, and I wanted to take pictures with everybody out there. Like they were running after me, and that happened at the fight at this one too. It's definitely like that's one thing I love fighting like out east, is because that respect and that love they give you, and you can tell it means something to them when you present them and when you fight for them. So when I was in India, we were on the newspapers every morning, Times of India, all those newspapers every day. It got a little bit crazy. Every time I'd open up my hotel room door, there'd be a picture of us on the front. Yeah. Then when I went to the weigh-ins, it was at the mall. And just, I've never walked onto a scale and kind of felt the energy, and I lost it. And it was just like, I've never gone into that kind of mode. And it was the fans. And then the next day, walking out to 12,000 people, there's a Bollywood industry on the lower floor, and just doing all that. It was amazing. It was very cool.
Great. We've got a couple of fan questions for you as well. I'm going to put them in right now. Aberon Singh asks, how does it feel to train in the gym, which has produced great champions? And when can we expect him to join? Well, what he says is a bigger MMA leagues. How long is his contract with Brave?
How does it feel to train out in Montreal? It's a dream come true for me. It's when I started, the first guy that I kind of found out about was George St. Pierre.
Now, just to tell other the audience, it's TriStar Gym that he's talking about. Yes.
Yeah, so when I started, my whole room was plastered with George St. Pierre posters. So I didn't even know what TriStar really was before I knew who George St. Pierre was. So I had posters of him, and just his backstory related to me. He was somebody who was bullied, picked on from a small town, found mixed martial art, but he found karate at a young age. I didn't find anything until the age of 22. Like I was a picked on kid. I was in high school, but I never fought back or anything. I just kind of took it. I just accepted my environment. That was my biggest weakness, was I accepted the environment that was around me, and I just adjusted to it. I just accepted this is what my life is. And so then when I finally got there, it was literally what I used to do is when I would sprint on the treadmill and do my sprints, I would put up a YouTube video of George and I'll watch his highlights, and I sprint and make me work harder. And it was crazy to just put the phone down and just look into the cage and see him in real life doing the exact work and be sprinting on that treadmill, because I was there when he was training for his comeback fight. That's when I originally moved out there. Okay. And it was just crazy. I'm like, man, I can put my phone away and I'm watching the real thing right in front of me. And just to be around that presence as he was getting ready for a fight, there's a lot of killers in that gym, but that was one of those role models. So that was, it let me know that to get anywhere in this sport, it's based on work ethic. The talent, everybody has enough talent to get to the top of this one. It's a work ethic that separates these guys. And I saw what he does. He's a champ, but he's a first one to arrive and the last one to leave every session. So I always wanted to be there before him, and I always wanted to leave after him. I never felt like I should have been one of those people that leaves ever before the champ. So I always made note of that to myself. As far as the Brave contract goes, I'm not sure exactly how many fights I'm signed for. I believe it's 2, might be 3. Right now, Brave is amazing. I really love that. The last show, the promotion, it felt like we were fighting on a very high production show. I got sought out by Itea, who found me over Facebook and told me that this is what's going on over there. These are the people putting on, the Prince of Bahrain putting it on. They're looking for an Indian fighter, and they came to me, and just the love they showed me over there for that. As long as a promotion treats you right, they take care of you. That's all a fighter can ask for. I understand that there's promotions like the UFC out there and stuff like that are very well known. And every fighter strives for that. Yeah. But at the end of the day, every fighter also strives to take care of their family, take care of themselves. And if a promotion does that for them, then there's really no reason to leave. Yeah. And Brave is definitely one of those people that I can grow with, those organizations I can grow with. I see the potential, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, we have pretty high expectations of Brave as well. They were here recently in Mumbai for a press conference, so we met Mohammed Shahid as well. They're putting in, they're backing MMA. They're putting in a lot of money. They want to go global as well. They said they're going to come to India as well for some fights, Europe. So we've got
I'll
really
sell it up.
high hopes for
Yeah, I said it right after in the press conference. I'm like, because what happened in the press conference was they kept talking about Arab MMA. They kept talking about how big they were going to make Arab MMA, and I was like, listen, don't forget about India MMA.
Yeah.
We are a billion. I'm like, I will sell out arenas in India. I will sell out stadiums in India. I'll take it wherever Indians are across the world. We'll sell it out. Just grow with me. I'll grow with you guys, and that's it.
Well, the good thing is their CEO, Mohammed Shahid, is from India. He's Indian origin. Of course, he's taken citizenship there now. So he understands, he's from India. He understands India and, the culture and the fact that it needs, MMA needs to grow and it needs a bigger platform. And there are a lot of fans and it needs to be nurtured a bit and it needs to be grown. And I think they do have a lot of plans of promoting MMA in India, which is great.
Yeah, and the one that I like about him is that I see the vision. When a man speaks, you can either see a man's vision or you can't. You can either see someone passionate about something, and when we talk, we can see that we're on that level. When we speak, our words come together because we can see our dreams and our visions, and we can speak about them, and we can stand by them that we're passionate behind it. So that's where our energies kind of mesh together. Him being the promotion, me being the fighter. So that's where we can be two very powerful forces. And there's definitely a lot behind that.
Yeah. Now, another fan question from Muhammad Mujtaba Faraz. He says, weren't you going to be signed by the UFC? Dana White said that he was stealing Mangat. I think that was from an Instagram post, right, of yours?
Yeah. Post.
Now, he also says, I also follow him on Instagram, saw the stories he shared while preparing for UFC. What happened? Not saying Brave is not good enough or any less of an opportunity. Just curious to know.
I think they were going through the whole changeover at that time, which they just kind of finished out right now. What's going on with the UFC right now is, or it was at that time, the roster is completely packed. They're having a lot of trouble, even, I believe, giving fights to the guys that are on the rosters. And if you follow the fighters close enough, it seems like they're all fighting to get a fight.
A lot of them are, because a lot of them we spoke to a UFC fighter called Cole Miller recently, just yesterday, and he has
he's not happy with
he's not happy with the situation right now, partly because of the whole way UFC Manila got cancelled and the fact that he wasn't given a fight quickly enough. So like you said, there are a lot of the fighters want to be fighting more, especially the ones coming up, because they're not making enough money per fight. So they need to be fighting more to make more money.
Yeah, the smaller weight classes are the most they're the most trouble to get into. 125, they said they're over 3 people on the roster. So they're not only are they already at capacity, got 3 over. Especially with the tough finale that just happened. Most of those guys are not getting contracts, even though some of those guys had good performances and stuff. And then there's bantamweight and featherweight. I fight at either flyweight or 135. So those, Sean Shelby is the one who used to run that. I don't know if he still is.
He is, because Joe Silva used to run it, and Sean has taken over from him now.
Right. Yeah. So So now it's another guy that's taken over the smaller weight classes, which is the Titan matchmaker.
Okay.
But yeah, those weight classes are packed right now, and that's the only problem. Even though I don't understand why they don't see the amount of, the capital they could gain signing an Indian here. They're also, it's up to them, right? I'll let them figure it out. Like I said, at this point, options are always open.
Yeah.
I can carry this 1 billion person army that I have behind me, and whatever promotion I go to and they treat me right and we grow right, we're going to cash in on that. So if it's the UFC, if it's Brave, at the end of the day, I'm getting in a cage across another man. I fight. One of my mentors, Viviano, he fights in 1FC, has been the 135 champ. he's turned down the contract 3 times now, and he's well taking care of his family because the Asian market is such a big market for MMA. So yeah, the UFC is always a dream. It's always a dream, but I'm not going to sit around waiting for it either anymore.
Yeah, there was talk about the UFC coming into the market with Ultimate Fighter in 2012, but that didn't work out. Then right now, recently...
That's how it's supposed to be.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I was supposed to be part of that. I was. That's why, as soon as they announced that, I packed my bags and I moved to Montreal. It was literally like a week after that.
Yeah.
And I spoke to Ariel Hawani about that, and Ariel actually broke the news to me. He actually added me in a tweet. He's like, listen, because me and Ariel, we ran into each other a lot of times in Toronto and stuff like that, and he knows I'm an Indian fighter, and there's a lot of the media that already had known about me. And then Sean Shelby and me, we were talking through text back and forth. Then they did their trip to India, and then plans just kind of, they weren't sure how much talent there was in India to do it tough from even Indians around the world. So then they kept pushing it, and then that plan just kind of disappeared all of a sudden, and nobody was talking about it like literally a year later.
Yeah.
I was just sitting waiting on that to come through because I was guaranteed on that.
Scott Coker has also recently said that Bellator has plans for India, especially since Viacom, which owns Bellator, has such a big presence in India.
Yeah.
So I guess the organizations are eyeing India, but it's just a matter of it happening at the right moment and at the right time.
Definitely, yeah. And that's where I think Brave has the advantage right now because they understand the market, they know how to market it, they know how to get in there.
Yeah.
I think UFC had trouble getting in there. I don't really know exactly how the logistics and all that stuff work, but I think they kind of went in there and realized it's a whole different animal in there. Everybody thinks different. You got to appeal to the fans different. Cricket is huge. You got to make the people understand what the sport even is, first of all. It's just a whole different thing.
Well, did you watch Sultan recently? Salman Khan's and also Brothers. So there have been a couple of movies on MMA, of course. It has started that, but of course, it hasn't really transferred over into people actually knowing what MMA is because they just remember Salman Khan in a cage fighting.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great start. The fact that, it's such big movie stars.
Well, that's how I was.
Yeah.
Even from my day in Bahrain, that's how when I would meet people out on the streets and stuff, like Indians and stuff like that, and they were trying to understand what I was there for, boxing, kickboxing, and then I would use that movie as an example, and they're like, oh, that's what you're doing. I'm like, yeah. From that, what Salman Khan was doing in the cage. That's what I'm here to do.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's a great way of explaining it now. So now, Brave did put out a live stream, for fans in India as well, but there were problems during that streaming. There was no sound, so a lot of fans weren't able to see it. So can you just tell them a little about the fight? Your opponent, Troy Bantang. Is that the correct?
If they want to see the fight, they can go to my fan page. I was able to get the stream. Well, it seems like the St. Line technical team was better than the Brave technical team. Oh, great.
So do you mind if we share it with the, we'll take the link and share it?
On my page, Gurdarshan St. Line Mangat. It's there. It's perfect sound, perfect everything.
Okay, great.
I had my own technical team ready to go over here.
Awesome. So we will, use that stream. So, if you can tell us a little about the fight and your opponent and your strategy coming into the fight. Did you watch his videos? Were there any videos of his, available? How did you, strategize and plan coming into the fight?
Well, I found out that he fought two weeks before my fight. He had won. I guess he had a fight already lined up, and it was their team's promotion, Team Lakay, which are very dangerous fighters from the Philippines, which is basically the TriStar of the Philippines.
Okay.
They just had a huge upset in ONE FC. They just beat Amayoki, one of their main guys, Eduardo. So they're coming off a big high. Their stand-up is really good. They're big stand-up guys. On the ground, they're a little bit lost. But this was one of those fights where I think he believed that I was just going to take it to the ground and beat them there because I know their weakness. I knew their weakness. whether this guy went somewhere else. He hadn't fought in he fought 2 weeks before that. But what happened was the fight came into a stand-up fight, and I would exchange him. My exchanges were too fluid. I trained my stand-up a lot, and it's something where it's been very uncomfortable for me. But I've been working with one of the best kickboxing coaches out here, and his younger brother is a top 5 Kalori kickboxer. Jay Johnsey, his brother is Josh Johnsey, who's a 155er, and he's top 5 in the world. So that's the guy I was working with. Every 2 to 3 days, I would be working with him. So everything kind of came together. My reactions and everything. Every time you throw a punch, everything is timed. Once you get in the cage, it's just your mind firing off. There's no thinking about what you're gonna do. Your body's been trained to fire off at certain things. So everything was just kind of coming together once I was in there. So the strategy that he thought was going to happen, where I was going to take him to the ground, that's just how I finished the fight. But the fight didn't go on the ground it didn't go to the ground whatsoever, really. And I just picked him apart. And it was nice, right? Because it builds confidence in that sense, because I know these guys are known for that. Yeah. And he threw hard kicks. Like right now, my leg I've been having, he gave me some hard leg kicks. It's really sore right now. My eye here has taken a little bit. But other than that, I know he's feeling probably a lot more than what I'm feeling right now. Tough guy, very strong guy. When I grab his legs, I usually get the single leg. He had very good dexterity, very flexibility. He was jumping around for a long time. From there, I just had to remain composed. I wanted to look like a very professional fighter. I know I hadn't fought in about a year and a half. It had been a long layover for me. So when I got in there, I wanted to look like a completely different guy. And it's from all the feedback I'm getting, it seems like I did look that way. So I was impressed with it. I'm very happy with it. There's always places to improve, and I will keep growing. But there's definitely improvement that I've made over a year and a half, where people thought I was maybe just chilling around, just hanging out. I was working every day. I've been putting in 2 sessions every day for sure, even when I haven't had a fight set up.
So any news on when your next fight is going to be, and any kind of opponent in mind?
Yeah, we have started talking a little bit. Just I just got home just like a little while ago, so they did send me a few messages. They're asking me if I want to fight at 135 or 125 for the next one. I think I do want to make the cut to 125, but the thing is, I felt so good at 135. I cut no weight for that fight. I literally on weigh-in day, I went on the bike for maybe 10 minutes with a sauna suit on. I stepped in the sauna at all.
So you feel like that's really your natural walking weight? That's how much you walk around it, more or less. It's
not even my natural walk. Like I walk around about 145, 146. It was just my diet, my everything, my preparation, the way I ate throughout the camp. All that stuff was very calculated, and it started paying off on the week of the fight.
Yeah.
Everything was controlled for the last month or so, like that. So as soon as it was time to really kind of cut things out, it was just melting away. And then as I was waking up the night before, I was literally 3 pounds away. Woke up, I was 2 pounds away. Then I went and rolled the. So, but the thing is, guys get big at 135. Like some of these guys get up to 165 on the day of the fight. So depending on what kind of competition I'm getting, they're going to get bigger. So 125 might be a better thing, but I just got to suffer more to make that weight. They were thinking about, I might possibly be on Brave's next card and Curitiba, Brazil. Brazil's definitely a place I've always wanted to go to, and to fight out there would be it'd be definitely one of those things where I extend the stay a little bit, So
awesome. Now, as you know, there's been a new association which has been formed with Tim Kennedy, Cowboy Cerrone, Velikis, Bjorn Rebney. Now, what are your views? What are your views on the association? And I think there's a couple of other associations, if you want to call them associations, unions. Of course, technically you can't call them unions because the fighters are independent contractors and not employees. So, but what are your views on the necessity of having an association to protect fighters' rights?
I'm not too sure exactly what they stated because I was over there for my fight. So that happened on the Wednesday. So I saw the news, but I think it's really good because fighters need. And if you go in any other organization, you go in the NHL, you go in NFL, You go and you go in any professional organizations, the fighters need to be protected. And I think there was one thing where they were like, I believe it's 8% of the profit that's given to fighters. That needs to be brought up.
Yeah.
Without the fighters, there is no MMA. There is no show.
Yeah.
If these guys, like some of these guys, are walking away with like $1,000, what are they going to put towards their training? Like, what are you going to get out of it?
Yeah.
And Cole Miller and all these guys are a perfect example of it. Look what's going on with Cole Miller right now, right?
Yeah.
He's not a rare story. He's actually a very common story.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And the sport is growing, but the fighter salaries are not. So that kind of something right there. The percentages are going down. They're getting more shows in. They're getting more fighters involved, and the sport is growing rapidly. But the pockets and the way that they need to take care of their families and stuff is not. And that's where all these things need to come into play. There should be some sort of fighter insurance. There should be some sort of higher salary where we feel like professionals, where we feel like I'm putting in this work because this is what I'm taking home at the end of the day. And that's very important. And it's awesome that big names are the ones that are standing behind this.
Yeah.
Like, not somebody that's retired or something like that. It's like, you got guys like George St. Pierre, Cowboy Cerrone, Tim Kennedy and stuff like that. They're
and
notable names. They're vocal names.
Yeah.
So they're names that speak out, like especially like Cowboy Cerrone. He's very verbal.
Yeah.
And Tim Kennedy also. They're names that people will still watch in the UFC, and the fact that they're standing behind it it's very cool. And I hope it's a starting of something new.
Now, can you tell us a little about the state of MMA in India and your perception of it?
State of MMA in India, or even Indians, I think in general worldwide right now. Like what I want to be the one that opens like the gates. I open up the floodgates to the next generation of Indian warriors. And I think that's kind of what's going on right now. And I'm hoping that's kind of the impact that I'm leaving. Because to become a good fighter, first you have to have belief in yourself. Then you will gain your community support. And that's the biggest thing. I think the reason that out of 1 billion people, we don't already have somebody in the UFC, I think comes down to the Indian mindset and the how we look at athletes. How we look at sportsmen. We almost kind of look down on it almost seems like. And yet that's why we never are seen on these big stages and stuff, but yet we are very smart. We're very strong. I think people and including us Indians, we also think that we're just weak at these sports, that there's notable races and stuff like that stand out and dominate all these sports. I fought against all different kinds, and I'm telling you, I've come out stronger, faster, better than all of them. And I think it's just looking into myself and realizing, listen, being Indian might be the strongest thing possible, and nobody knows it, including Indian fighters. So that's the skills coming up. I think we're still a bit behind and stuff like that, but like I said, I hope I'm opening the floodgates.
Yeah.
It seems like we have a lot of heart. That's something that anyone that sees an Indian fighter, the skills are building, but the heart, we're born with it. We carry a lot of pride. We carry we want to represent to the fullest. So we fight till the death, and that's definitely something that's something that we can respect of Indian fighters everywhere in the world. But at the end of the day, we need the respect of our countrymen first before we can gain the respect of the world. I have the same problem here in Vancouver all the way to India. Like if you think in India that it seems like they're not respected, it's the same situation out here. It's the same thing in my community. It's hard to get sponsorships. It's hard to get people to jump behind it. They way rather support something else. I speak so highly of my community, but it's hard to get them to respect it and support me at the same time. So I know that's the same thing going on in India. So that's going to be where I think by the time my time passes, hopefully that they will be at that point where people will see, man, these guys are tough. This is a tough sport. This is a legit sport. These are warriors. These guys are fighting for us, representing us, and proud of it. Kind of like how Kushti wrestling and stuff like that is respected. It should be the same way.
Yeah, now just to let you know, you probably know this, but there is an Indian fighter now in Invicta, a girl called Manjeet Kolikar, who had her first fight against Colleen Medeiros recently. And, hopefully you guys are going to open up, the door for a lot more Indian fighters. And we know personally, because we get so many messages from people wanting to be Indian fighters, and there are a lot of smaller cards. Of course, there's SFL, which is coming back now in India. There's a lot of
Mhm.
smaller cards, so it is a really growing sport. Now, coming to my next question from that, I want to ask, what's your advice for Indian MMA fighters looking to make it on the international stage?
You just gotta work on your skill. It's honestly just work on your skill. From there, whatever opportunity comes, you gotta show up on it. At the end of the day, I think it works the same way now, exactly how it works here. I fought on these small amateur shows out here. I fought on local tournaments to get into these tournaments. I was like, a lot of people don't know my first 9 fights were amateur fights, and you don't get paid for those. I paid money for those. I paid money to fight. I paid money to get in a cage. I don't even get ticket sales on any of those things. So it goes really anywhere. It's you believe in your dream. You're gonna have to. It's like having any plan in life, right? You first gotta invest in your business, and hopefully it's gonna pay you off in the end. This is just a different kind of the same thing. Work on your skill, get into any gym and just start training your skill. People are always looking for the best places right away and stuff like that. At the start, it doesn't really matter because you really don't know anything to start with anyway. So you gotta create your skill. Don't jump to the fancy things right away. I always say, like, I always see these guys walk into gyms on their first day trying to do spinning back kicks and all these highlight reel things that you got to get the basics down. You got to get that work down. You got to get your eating down. You got to get your mind down. That's the number one thing I would say is get your mind down. It's not, I don't care if you fought in the streets. I have hundreds of people coming up to me, man, I got 15 street fights, this and this. I don't care, man. It means nothing. It's a completely different animal when you're in the cage compared to being on the street. It's completely different when you got all eyes on you and you got all of your country watching, all your people watching. You got many people wanting you to fail and many people wanting you to do well. It's a whole different animal. So I would say just work your way up. There is opportunity for us. Work on that. Like, I think the SFL thing that Bill DeSange is doing, that's amazing. It's going to bring up a lot of talent. It's going to give them exposure. It's something that I didn't even have access to, actually. I didn't have shows where there was a TV deal and they're going to have like weekly fights and stuff like that. I didn't have any of that. I fought on these local small shows here. I was doing my own marketing. I had to get my name out there. I had to do my own push. I had to self-promote myself, plus train and get my name out there. It was just my own self-promotion and my self-business and myself that I got it out there. The reason I'm even doing these interviews or picked up by a promotion or even being included with India MMA is because I built it up that way. I trained hard for it and I lived up to it.
Okay, now for the last question, because we know, you need to get some rest as well. You've had a long flight back and everything. So, we're glad you were able to talk to us. If you had a choice of any fighter in any promotion to fight, who would you pick? Who would you want to fight? Who's your dream fight?
My dream fight. Oh man, I remember I used to have those back in the day. Now it's just I want to fight the best, right? So be my dream fight.
I mean, in the 135, would it be like a Dominic Cruz, Dillashaw, a Faber?
Yeah, of course. Because those guys are at the top of the game. You beat those guys, you become the top man. So of course that's where you wanna get to. But there's a lot of stages you got to go through till you get to those points. And I remain honest with myself that I work my way up to those things. So that's why I can never say these dream things, because I see how honest the sport is and how hard it is to get to that level. And I have guys calling me out at this level where they shouldn't even be taking my name.
Yeah.
So I understand it that there's a process to this stuff, and you got to earn that process. You got to earn that respect to be able to call these guys out. Obviously you want to go after the top guys, and I just want to fight guys that challenge my spirit, that challenge my mind, keep me up at night, that makes me grow into the person that I am, that makes me fighting's hard. You have to prepare yourself mentally for these battles, and anybody that can take me to that point, from the opponent I just had to anybody, I have great respect for it, and they're a dream matchup at that point, and that's really all it is. I just don't want to cause anything, but yeah, there's definitely some ideas.
Okay.
I know there's certain people that want to come into the sport, other sports, and I would love to do those fights. Yeah, I'll let you fill in the blanks on that one if you want.
Okay.
But yeah, there's like you know, I want to get to a certain name where, like, you know, say there's a boxer or something that wants to challenge himself, and I'm a big enough name that I can make those kind of super fights happen in front of all the Indians and stuff like that, and do something like that. Those are dream fights for me too.
Great. Well, thank you for talking to us at the MMA India show. It was a pleasure, and we will be following you and your career, and we hope to talk to you soon, just before your, in between or your next fight before Brave. We'll be in touch, and all the best.
Yeah, make sure you guys check out the fight on. It's on my fan page. So Gurdarshan Saint Lion Mangat.
We will.
You can tweet at me at Saint Lion. I'm also on Twitch playing video games, streaming and stuff like that. That's what Mighty Mouse Johnson has me doing nowadays. So that's Saint Lion 87 also. So I'll play video games. You guys can talk and ask me whatever you guys want.
In fact,
and I'm usually on during
Demetrius Johnson did send a shout out to you through Akhilesh Gannavarapu, who also hosts our show with us now and then. He wasn't able to come today, but he did an interview with Demetrius recently, and Demetrius sent it a good luck to you through him, for your fight at Brave.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just posted up a picture on Twitter yesterday of the plan was that we all did our training camp this time together. Me, Viviano, and Mighty Mouse. We all did our training camp together, and we're all fighting this weekend. Where all three of us won. So I put up a nice little collage, and he retweeted, and that was one of the things that, we all accomplished what we said we were going to go. We trained together under one roof, but we all went to our separate parts of the world and accomplished what we needed to accomplish. At the end of the day, you're one man in the cage, but you train as an army, and that's kind of what we did this weekend.
Awesome. Well, we will be in touch, and thank you once again for talking to us. All the best.
Thank you. Yeah,
cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. Hello and welcome back to the MMA India show. We have a really exciting episode for you today. We are reviewing the fight, the Ultimate Fighter finale with Indian MMA guru Akhilesh Gannavarapu. Akhilesh, you're going to start paying me to say that from now on, I swear to God. The Indian MMA guru, you're going to pay me something. Man, कुछ तो demonetization के ज़माने में थोड़ा अपना black पैसा इस तरफ कर दे. अभी demonetization, अभी मैं बोल रहा हूँ तो एक कहानी भी सुनाता हूँ उसके बारे में fight को लेके. And with us is Taman Preet Singh as well. Welcome to both of you. And I'll start with a little story, demonetization story and how it affected my viewing today. So as the final between Tim Elliott and Demetrius Johnson was starting, of course, the milkman rings the bell at the same time. And I'm trying to watch the match, and he's like, and I'm talking to him from, afar. The maid opens the door, and he's like, "Saab, wo paisa." She brings over the bill. So I'm like, 2,000 ka bill. It was a 1,200 rupee bill thing. So he's like, "Saab, change nahi hai." So I'm like trying to, and the ground is going on, of course, and I'm negotiating with him, and I'm like, fuck. And this is when Tim Elliott, has him almost. We think the fight is going to end. We think he's going to win. And all of this is going in. And I'm like, abhi change nahi hai to kaise do? He said, "Saab, check likh do phir." So I'm taking out my checkbook and trying to write him a check while I'm watching the first round. And I'm like, of course, going in and out. And finally, I get him out of the house. But that is my demonetization story of the day and how it affected my viewing of today's UFC TUF finale match. Now, coming to the main card, I didn't wake up in time to see the prelims. 5:30 a.m. in India. I mean, I love UFC, but I slept a little late. So, I'll catch it again and we'll maybe talk about it later again. But coming to the main card, the first fight, Moreno versus Ryan Benoit.
Yeah.
Of course, Moreno won. He was he was clearly the stronger guy, though. Benoit's an amazing fighter as well.
Right.
You want to say something?
So,
Okay,
yeah. So, coming into the fight itself, Moreno, he was coming off an impressive victory against Smoker. He was ranked 16th in the TUF this season. But again, the way he finished, Smoker at that point was ranked number 9, if I remember correctly. And he finished him in the first round decisively. And Moreno has a very good, BJJ background from Mexico. Yeah. And, you have Ryan Benoit, who's a really, strong fighter, really good hands, good boxer, but at the same time has excellent wrestling. So going into the fight, I thought, that the person who had a better stand-up game would eventually come out on top. This was similar to your Bader Latifi kind of an encounter where both are really good on the ground. Yeah. But the guy who was, either A, decisive in his submission game, or B, very good in his stand-up, technically would come out on top. Yeah. And Moreno, I thought Moreno would be able to do it. He showed that he's a really, good prospect going forward. He's someone like a Paige Van Zandt, where he's marketable, has, UFC has been searching for that one fighter that they can cater to the Mexican audience.
So we should expect him to see him on Dancing with the Stars next?
I don't see why. I mean, he's like Sage Northcutt of Mexico.
Okay.
He's marketable, looks good.
Yeah.
He's very young.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure UFC is gonna market and promote the hell out of him going forward.
Yeah. Great. Now the next fight. Sorry, Taman, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, Praveen, just before we started, I sent you a picture regarding the rankings. So I don't know how these rank. I missed this fight, Ryan Benoit versus Brandon Moreno, but still in the rankings, Brandon Moreno is ranked below Luis Molca.
Yeah.
Right now,
yes. So it doesn't matter. So UFC rankings, they've always been shoddy. You look at a guy who's defeated a person above him, but is still ranked below him. But if you look at the MMA rankings of independent journalists, they kind of reflect a better scenario. Where in UFC, for example, if you're unranked, let's look at the best example would be Jimmy Rivera and Uriah Faber. Uriah Faber at that point number 3. Jimmy Rivera was even not ranked. He wasn't ranked. He just came to the promotion and he was thrown into the deep end against the number 3rd ranked fighter. He defeated him. Still, Uriah Faber is 4-5 now, and Jimmy Rivera I think is about 13th at this point. So, trying to make sense of UFC rankings really is difficult. Firstly, second thing, I think they kind of have this accumulation of victories because I think the rankings reflect how many fights they've had, how many victories they've had, and where they stand in the contender spot, rather than them beating a ranked opponent or someone ranked above them and then jumping over them. That I don't think happens in UFC.
So what I'm checking right now is Jimmy Rivera is ranked number 4th.
He's ranked number 4th?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of strange, and like you have defeated Uriah Faber, who was ranked number 3, and now Uriah has already come below like 5. He's like 6 or 7 in the UFC rankings right now. So that makes a point. Like, why not correct them? Because UFC rankings, what they have written on their website, like all the media promotions vote for pound. I don't think pound for pound they vote for it, but I'm not sure about the ranking. That if only UFC does it or the other media promotions also submit it.
No. So this is just UFC. Independent journalists, they have different ranking systems.
Okay. So that was the only thing. And what about who should he fight next? Because according to the rankings, he should fight Dustin Ortiz or John Moraga. I think John Moraga would be a good fight for Brandon Moreno.
There are so many top guys. You look at someone like Kyoji. You look at someone like Kyoji is gonna fight soon. There are top ranked opponents who already lost to Demetrius Johnson, or ranked 7, 8, 9. I'm pretty sure after this, Moreno was coming in as ranked as 12th ranked guy in the division.
Right.
Pretty sure he's gonna leapfrog to about 8, 9 after this. So I don't know. Flyweight division is pretty complicated at this point. But again, going forward, the way we discuss, I think by the end of the discussion, we can reach an opponent because you had multiple flyweight bouts on the card.
Yes, that's. What about you, Praveen? What do you think about it? Who should he fight? Bren Moreno.
It doesn't really go by the rankings nowadays, does it? So
Yeah, right.
so
Instead of your guy, I'm
I personally don't put much. I mean, I haven't thought about it really, to tell you the truth, who he should fight next. But the fight next, if we want to come to the fight next, was Sarah McMann and Alexa Davis, right?
Yeah.
Now, both of them such physically powerful women, especially Sarah McMann. Always promised so much and has so much potential, but never really fully fulfilled. But today she showed she's back on the path to fulfilling her potential.
Sarah, I think any fighter who went up against Ronda Rousey had a very demoralizing effect on their careers. You look at someone like Kat Zingano, for example. You look at Alexis Davis. You look at Sarah McMann, Pech Correia. All of these fighters, except for someone like Misha Tate, who has always been a perennial title contender. I think everyone else kind of went on a different path once they fought Ronda Rousey. But coming to this fight, it was interesting because Alexis Davis, really scrappy fighter, one of the best fighters who's very unorthodox. While you have Sarah McMann, who is an Olympic level wrestler, the only difference was, on their feet, Davis has already shown. So Davis has come back from predicaments where she was going to lose, but still came back to win the fight. So she's that kind of a scrappy fighter who catches you by surprise, does whatever it takes to get the victory, while Sarah McMann, relies heavily on her wrestling. But at the same time, the key difference was Alexis Davis, phenomenal off her back. Really good jiu-jitsu, really good grappling game. So you even saw that, once Sarah McMann took her down in the first round, it was completely dominated by Alexis Davis off her back. She got her in the guard. She just pummeled Sarah McMann on the ground. Or while being on her back. So so I thought, I just wanted to see how good of a game plan Alexis Davis would have, because she's coming off over a year of layoff. While at the same time, I also wanted to see how Sarah McMann would handle this kind of an opponent. Because, she has fought, for example, if you look at someone like Jessica Ai, who's primarily a striker, doesn't have that good of a ground game, that good of a defensive game. But you coming down to Alexis Davis, and she is phenomenal. You saw that in the first round. But going into the second round, Sarah McMann had nothing to lose. Both women had nothing to lose, to be very honest, and had everything to gain. And she made use of her wrestling. Once again, took Alexis Davis down. But at this time, she was cautious about what Davis could do. She took that into consideration and finished the fight. It was good. It was a statement made by Sarah, but it could have gone either way. So you could have made a point where Davis could have finished Sarah in the first round itself. So still a dominant victory.
Could have, would have, should have. We can't go by what may have happened. We have to go with what has happened. Because if we do that, any fight can go either way. According to that moment, what somebody does.
The difference that I'm trying to make is you are facing a fighter who's coming off a long layoff, and ring rust. While people say it's not something that is, really that really makes a difference in a fight, it does. You look at John Jones when he came back against OSP, one of the best pound for pound fighters ever, and he looked very rusty against OSP. So Sarah, again, she finished Davis off in the second round, looked impressive. But the way Davis just pummeled McMann in the first round, still, she has a lot of holes in her game, Sarah. She has good wrestling, but not that of a submission game.
Yeah, but we got to see one submission. That was my point. I mean, we cannot talk about the wrestling. We know that she's one of hell of a wrestler. She's Olympic silver medalist.
Yeah.
And today we also got to see her submission game. uh, you can say what was it? It was arm triangle, I think.
It was
That's right.
an arm triangle.
It was arm
But
triangle.
the more impressive thing I think was the way she finished it. Alexis Davis was trying to defend herself. So all you have to do is try to catch hold of your leg and try to create that separation and create an extension by which you can wiggle out of the predicament. And Davis was trying to do that,
Do
but
that, right.
Sarah was so strong. Davis just couldn't get out of the hold, because McMann absolutely dominant. She's
Yeah.
one of the strongest fighters in the 135-pound division.
And she looks like it too.
Yes.
So
Coming from
So-
wrestling base, you expect fighters to be very, very strong.
yeah.
So yeah.
So
that's
Taman,
right.
since you love to do these things, who do you think she should fight next?
Next, I think Rocky Pennington would be a good fight.
Akhilesh, your comments?
Raquel Pennington. Raquel Rocky Pennington versus Sarah
Stylistically,
McMann. Yeah.
stylistically, that is a very bad matchup for Raquel. I
Yeah.
can see the reason why you would want to do that, but
Right.
stylistically, if you talk about Rocky, who's primarily a very good boxer, is scrappy on the ground, versus Sarah McMann, and Rocky is kind of similar to a combination of Jessica Ai and Alexis Davis. But
but-
you have
Yeah, but what I saw in her last fight was she had good takedown defense also.
Pennington against Misha.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, she did. But again, you're talking about Misha, and when we talk about wrestling, you have seen what Kat Zingano did to Misha Tate. She ragdolled her, absolutely ragdolled her. And Sarah McMann is kind of the same mold as Kat Zingano, exceptionally strong. Once she gets you, when she took Alexis Davis down, she had no problem. Davis couldn't defend it.
Yeah, right. That's
Right. So
that's fine.
yeah, so stylistically, when we look at it, kind of might be a bad matchup for Rocky, but at the same time, the way she performed in the last fight, you never know.
Yeah, that was my point, because nothing else. Either everybody is booked, or they are about to be. I mean,
Pena, she's
stylistically,
free.
or yes, Pena, but she's not going to. She asked us that I'll sit free until I'm going to get the title fight. I'm not sure if she'll fight a non-title fight again or not. He has multiple times said that I'm not going to fight a non-title fight. I'm going to fight for the title because I deserve it.
The problem here is she's doing something that Khabib did. And I'm not saying Pena did not defend legit contenders. She did. She did defeat one legit contender. The entire point is she has not fought for a very long time, and if UFC doesn't give her any, look at the title picture. You have Amanda Nunes, you have Ronda Rousey. If Ronda wins, will Pena get the next shot? I don't think so. UFC will directly go with Holly Holm and Ronda Rousey. If
No,
Nunes-
Let's first of all agree that there's no logic to these things. We may
Yeah, it's a
say that this person deserves to fight this person. It doesn't work like that. We need to understand
right, because
it
it's a
doesn't work like
promotional
that.
thing.
They see business-wise. Sometimes, of course, some of the other fights you can fight, but they're always looking for an interesting matchup. So it doesn't matter. The deserve word shouldn't really be used anymore that much. So some fights, of course, happen as we think they might, but a lot of them work out as to what people want to see. And you know what? I say fair enough. If I want to see Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz Part 3, I want to, that's the fight they're going to give the fans.
Right.
Or like Khabib, Tony Ferguson actually makes sense right now also. Right?
Right.
Oh, that's a very bad matchup for Tony Ferguson.
It is.
That's an absolutely bad matchup for
But
Tony
that
Ferguson.
is a fight that both of them deserve as number one contenders, especially since Conor says he's going to be away for some time. What I'm trying to say is sometimes it does work out. They deserve it, and it's a fight that people want to see as well.
Yeah, just to elaborate on that, I'm pretty sure the next title fight will be Tony Ferguson's and not Khabib's when Conor's the champion. You absolutely do not want to put Khabib with Conor McGregor, and if you're trying to build Tony Ferguson, you absolutely cannot put Tony in front of Khabib, because like it or not, Khabib he's on a different level. His wrestling probably the best in the entire division.
That
Not
is
just the entire
that
division, in the
is
entire UFC.
without a doubt.
Okay,
That is
right.
without a doubt. But I've been pretty impressed with what I've seen of Tony Ferguson
Tony, yes.
as
Very
well.
resilient, has really really good chin, but at the same time, the kind of mauling that Khabib puts on, the amount of pressure he puts on during his fights, I don't think either Tony Ferguson or Conor can take that.
Yeah. So anyway, let's get back into the Ultimate Fighter finale for tonight. The next fight, of course, was Ian Cotelba versus Cannonier. Jared
Cannonier, yes.
Jared
Cannonier.
right? Now, what a big guy. Ian Cotelba is a big guy. But Jared Cannonier is like huge, and he's apparently cut down a lot of weight to come to the light heavyweight category.
That's correct. That's correct.
And in
last
the
two
beginning,
fights
we
were,
saw Ian Cotelba really kind of moving forward fearlessly. But towards the second and third rounds, he was always trying to take it to the ground, because we did see, especially towards the final, I think, a couple of minutes, Cannonier was just like a tank,
Yeah.
He's built like a tank. He was just moving forward, and literally, like Lawler sometimes towards the end of his fights, he just wants his hand. He gave that impression.
Yeah, hands were down. No protection.
Yeah, just wants to go and
Yeah.
the one knock. I mean, that's the feeling I got of just a bigger Robbie Lawler.
Right. So the main thing that I was looking at is and this is what I said even before the fight, when Jared was making his way down to the octagon. He looked different. His last heavyweight fight, he was he had more mass, but this time around, he was trimmed down, and that actually helps. If you look at someone like Anthony Johnson, you have a specific weight, an optimum weight. I call it an optimum weight where you are better. Either it's moving down a weight class or moving up a weight class. You look at Anthony Johnson when he was in the welterweight division, then you look at Anthony Johnson now when he's in the light heavyweight division. So there is this optimum weight where you are very, very good. And I think Jared has finally found that division, which is the light heavyweight. And he has really good Greco-Roman wrestling. You saw that during his clinches, the way the ease with which he was taking Jared down. But the more impressive part that I found with Ian was he was taking shots flush straight to the face, and he was still coming back. You talk about light heavyweight division, you talk about some really good chins. People have really good chins in the division. I put Ian right above everyone else.
Yeah.
Because the manner in which he took those shots straight, flush to the face, and still kept going.
Yeah.
That was in the second round.
In the fight tonight, both of the guys did. Like you said, he took some really big shots.
Yeah, I probably would go with the co-main event as the fight of the night.
Yeah.
But again, both the fighters were very impressive. No two ways about that. I was very impressed with Jared. The way in which he cut down weight, he looked phenomenal in the light heavyweight division.
Yeah.
And if he talks about going down to middleweight, I hope it doesn't happen, because if this guy goes down to the middleweight division, I'm pretty sure it's gonna knock some heads off. You have someone like Yoel Romero, for example, who is of kind of the same build. And can you imagine a fight between Yoel and Jared?
Jared Cannonier.
Yeah, but it's hard to imagine. I mean, he cut. I read about 35 pounds for this. I don't see him cutting any more weight.
Yeah, I mean the longer process. You have diets. You have people. Diets like Dolce diet. You have nutritionists. People that you can use within the industry that know how to cut weight safely. But the more important point is you need to have a specific weight that you walk around with. Your walking weight.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to come to. I mean, of course, there are diets you can follow, but it's all relative to the weight you walk around with. You can only cut so much weight safely.
So what fighters do normally is they have a walking weight, but once they enter a camp, they have something called a training weight. The weight at which they train. So 1 week prior, they have that training weight, but 1 week during that fight week, first a couple of days they normally cut weight by sweating, by working out. In the last couple of days, you can cut weight by dehydration. You can cut weight by losing excess amount of water or in form of sweat, and then get it all back after the weigh-in. So I've seen fighters. I know of fighters who have cut 40, 50 pounds.
Recently, bow.
Okay, but like I was saying, it's relative, of course, to your the training weight
Walking
is relative
weight,
to
yes.
the walking around weight,
Yeah.
right? And he seems to have cut a lot of weight just to come here.
So that's what I'm saying. I mean,
So you
physically
feel he can
looked
cut a little
phenomenal.
more weight. You feel he can, basically. That's what you're saying.
Yes, so his
Okay.
physical attributes when he was in the heavyweight division were considerably different. He had more mass. But today when he made his debut in the light heavyweight division, he had lesser mass. So he lost weight. And if that happens, and if he cut weight easily for light heavyweight, and if he says I want to go down to middleweight, there's a reason. I mean, probably it might be a hard cut for him, but the manner in which he lost that amount of weight to come down to light heavyweight, you can happen. I'm not gonna rule that out.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, I like the Ian Kotaluba at Wales. I mean, how he paints himself green with and to look like Hulk, and then he looks like Hulk when he
Yeah,
was
it was pretty fun to watch as well.
Yeah, yeah, and as Akhilesh said, yes, the main point was he was coming back. Yeah, like I see him like Fabio Maldonado. He just takes shots on his chin and just comes back around. And Jared was absolutely. I mean, in the second, I think first round went to
Kotalaba,
Ian
yeah.
Kotalaba, yes, and then in second and third round, Jared won those two rounds.
The
That-
other impressive thing in the second and third round was Jared. He cut weight to make his debut in light heavyweight, and he was not gassing out. It was Ian who was gassing out.
Right,
And
right.
Ian is a really good wrestler.
Yeah.
He has background in Greco-Roman, but he was the guy who was gassing out. So that is a scary aspect, and that is what I said. You have a particular weight which is your optimum weight, and I think this is Jared's optimum weight. And you put the top 15 next, the top 10, the top 5 guys in front of him, and with really good. He already has good cardio and conditioning, but with improved technique, I see him going up against the top 5 easily.
Right now at light heavyweight.
Light heavyweight, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, put him
seems-
against someone like Latifi.
Latifi,
What-
right, Latifi.
What's there to
That
lose?
is-
Latifi needs a victory anyways. You want to see how he fares up against a really good wrestler. You want to see how he fares up against a really good striker. And you have Latifi that is good in both of those departments.
What about Rua? Shogun Rua? He's not fighting, but I mean, I'm taking his name just so that people should remember him. He was one of the greatest. But I know, but still, if he wants to, Jared is there.
Okay, well,
No,
moving on to somebody we just spoke to, and of course we were all rooting for him. Jorge Masvidal versus Jake Ellenberger. He was controlling the fight. You know what I really love about Jorge? You see the difference in the way both of them entered the octagon. When their walkout music was playing, Jorge was so relaxed. He was so chill. He was giving, hey, kaisa bhai, oh, kaisa bhai, he was like, kaisa tu, high fives to everybody, hey, and smiling and winking at people. It was so relaxed. It was like there was no pressure of this huge arena on him. Whereas you look at Jake, he entered and it looked like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders. He was very, which is fair enough. I'm not saying that's the wrong approach or something. I'm just saying, it was two different such approaches. One guy, of course, if he had lost, people might say, he should have concentrated a little more or been a little more serious. But what I mean is, it's so good to see that kind of easiness, of going into the ring and still having your talent stand out. Because he's such a talented guy, and he showed it immediately. He was in control of the fight. I think Ellenberger got 1 or 2 straight in, but otherwise, Masvidal almost finished him, of course, also in the first round. And he just
Yes,
barely He just barely survived, I would say.
Yeah, because until you had that Matt Brown fight, Ellenberger was almost cut. They said the next loss you have, if you lose the next fight, you're done. So and again, Matt Brown downhill slope is on a decline. Uh, so Ellenberger's real test was against Masvidal, because Masvidal is one of those guys who's tremendously strong. You've seen how good he is in the clinches. The more damage that he did was in the clinches. His knees, those nasty elbows in the close range. So Masvidal is a really, really dangerous opponent, and you could see that in Ellenberger's face. That is why I think it was more serious, because he understood the gravity of the situation. If he had lost the fight in a decisive manner in the first round, I'm pretty sure UFC would have said, you know what, you're done.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense. I mean, if you're not you're not able to go up against the top 5, top 10 in the division, what are you doing there?
Yeah.
You're just a gatekeeper, yeah.
So it's probably gonna be another life for Ellenberger. Luckily, because of the way the fight stopped.
Yeah, but again, you've seen what Masvidal was doing to Ellenberger before his foot was caught inside in between the cage. So he was not doing well. I mean, you've seen his face. He was constantly getting lit up with those nasty rights, those elbows and clinches. Masvidal was completely controlling the fight. Ellenberger, as you said, had a couple of strikes when he countered a couple of combinations that Masvidal missed with. But otherwise, you had Masvidal who was completely dominating the fight.
Yeah.
If anything, the finish in that way might, as you said, hand a lifeline to Ellenberger. But otherwise, if he had lost decisively in that first round, I'm pretty sure he would have been given his walking papers by the UFC. At the same time, you have Ellenberger. He was so successful against Matt Brown because if you have seen, okay, so you talk about this fight, Masvidal landed those kicks to the body, and the body shots, and Ellenberger immediately turned around. He winced in pain. That was something that Matt Brown did, but that is not something that Masvidal does.
Yeah.
You drill Masvidal with shots, and he keeps coming back. Keeps coming forward.
What I find very amazing about Masvidal is his anticipation and his speed. He knows when the other fighter is going to kick, and he kicks at the same time almost.
Yeah, so that's telegraphing your opponent's moves. I mean, yeah, at this point, that is something that a guy with high confidence, with a lot of confidence, can do. And Masvidal is that kind of a person.
Yeah.
Ellenberger cannot do that because you've seen his body language.
Yeah.
He's not someone that is very confident at the moment. That kind of showed right from the very, very beginning.
In fact,
but again,
that's exactly what Masvidal mentioned, I think, in the interview when we spoke to him, that Ellenberger is not very confident of his abilities.
Right, and you've seen fighters, top level fighters, when they're, when they lack confidence, they don't do well. They don't do good.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened with Ellenberger. He got caught. He survived the initial flurry. If you have seen the initial flurry where Masvidal came right in, connected with those head kicks, then connected with some excellent combinations within the clinch in the close range. Ellenberger was not able to create that separation that he would have ideally wanted. Ellenberger, what he normally does is create separation, uses kicks to kind of maintain the distance, takes you down, works you on the ground. He was not able to do that. Masvidal was completely controlling the fight. So at the end, unlucky. Ellenberger definitely needs to challenge that and turn it into a no contest, because it absolutely has to be a no contest. I think Herb Dean even screwed up a bit. So at this point, what a referee...
Herb Dean did go outside, and I heard him asking the official something. So it's not like he immediately declared it, a TKO.
Right. So there are two things that you need to do at this point. Yeah, you have your Nevada State Athletic Commission representatives, cage side.
Yeah.
So this is why they come to every event. If there's a discrepancy, if there's a doubt over the result, what is going on, you have the reps over there who come into the cage and tell you what is going on. They explain the rules and they tell you this is what has to happen.
Yeah.
But at that point, if Herb Dean had intervened when Ellenberger's leg got caught in between, the railings of the octagon,
Masvidal.
Herb Dean,
Ellenberger.
So at that point, Herb Dean essentially should have stepped in. He should have separated the fighters. He should have stood Ellenberger up again, and then he should have asked the fighters to engage once again. So that is.
But that this is what I'm coming to. He did stop the fight. He did separate the fighters.
No,
Instead of putting them to his feet, see, Ellenberger was also hurt. His foot was hurt. It was clear that he needed, I think somebody from the commission needed to come and check his foot out as well. Now this is a question also, isn't it the commission? He went and asked the commission something. Was that his call then, or should the commission have said, this fight needs to go on or whatever? Whose call was that? Was that the fault of Herb Dean to declare it?
Yes.
Or was that the Nevada commission?
That is.
Because it's obvious that he did go and speak to them.
So that is where I was coming. So if Herb Dean had stepped in right when Ellenberger's leg got caught, he should have stepped in right there, separated the fighters. What he did was he stood back, he allowed Masvidal to engage.
Yeah,
so
but that's
once you
also
do
maybe
that,
because he didn't see immediately that his foot was caught. He only, because he was from the back. So it probably did take him a couple of seconds to realize that his foot was caught.
So that is where a positioning of a referee is very important. That is, if you talk to someone like John McCarthy, who is the head of the union, he would tell you essentially the importance of positioning when you're a referee. How you need to cover those angles and make sure that everything is visible at that point. So I think Herb Dean was not in a proper position, A. And the second thing is, once Masvidal engaged and once he hurt Ellenberger, then there is no point in stopping the fight, giving Ellenberger the time to recuperate, because that is, it doesn't make sense. So what NSAC and what, even the UFC rep, the regulatory affairs representative was at cage side said was, it was not a malfunctioning of the cage.
Yeah.
So unless, for example, if, so we have seen a couple of fights where someone slammed someone else through the cage door and the cage door gave way and both the fighters went outside, or one fighter went outside. That is a point where you say it's a malfunctioning of the octagon or of the cage. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
It was not a malfunction.
Yeah.
So the regulatory affairs guy can come in and say this is not something that is a malfunctioning. This is something that, his leg got caught. That was his. It's
accidental,
not
something.
Yeah, it's accidental.
Yeah.
And when it's accidental, your NSAC cannot do anything unless if you're stopping a fight. And this is where I say, and this is where we can bring in the fight between Verdum and Travis Brown, where Travis Brown wanted timeout. He got timeout for a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
Right. So that is a referee's fault.
But that was when Verdum attacked him and his finger got hurt because of him kicking on his hand. So
that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. What matters is if a referee says, if a fighter A cannot call a timeout, he cannot. Even if he says a timeout.
Yeah.
And if you saw that with Anderson Silva, Michael Bisping. Bisping's mouth guard fell off. Bisping wanted timeout, but Anderson Silva connected with a knee to the face. Right. So an opponent doesn't have to stop. It is the referee's judgment to stop a fight.
Right.
And this is where there are two things. A referee can say, this is something that happened. I want to separate you two. Take care of what has happened. Then engage once again. Or a referee can stop a fight and then go to the NSAC and then ask the representatives what has to be done. If you go to the NSAC, yes. So Herb Dean at that point could have made a decision, but what he chose to do instead was go to NSAC and go to the regulatory affairs representative and talk to them and see what their judgment is. If you talk to NSAC or if you talk to the regulatory affairs guy, what will they say? It was not, it wasn't something that's a malfunction, right?
Right.
So ideally, if you stop a fight, if you go to a representative, it's done. You stopped a fight. Once you stop a fight, it's done.
Yeah, right.
Unless you're the referee, unless you step in and say, I'm going to give him a couple of seconds to get free.
Yeah, which is what he should have done. He should have stopped, giving him, like you said, some time to rest his foot, recover, have it seen, and then started the fight again.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So if you talk about even the low blows, there is a reason why the referee steps in and says you have 5 minutes. It's well within the referee's bound. It's well within his power as the official to, give a fighter a certain amount of, I won't say give him like 30 seconds, give him, a couple of seconds to free himself, then engage. There is a reason why if two fighters are on the ground and something happens, the referee can stand both of them up, take, measures of what has happened, put both of them where he just lay that place on the ground and continue the fight. It's well within the referee's power to do that. But Herb Dean did not. He did not step in. He chose to go to NSAC. He chose to go to the regulatory affairs representative. He wanted their opinion, and obviously they'll say, you know what, that is done. It's the fight is over.
Fight is stopped. Yeah, fight is stopped. Fight stopped. But anyhow, we didn't see like Jake Ellenberger winning this fight. It was already Masvidal. I think he got hurt pretty badly in that first round, and I don't know if because from the point where I was seeing the fight, I didn't probably know why the fight was stopped. As Praveen was saying that if he was not intelligently, defending himself, or it was like Herb Dean stopped it and then went to NSSC and they said, okay, now it's done.
Well,
Yeah, so you talk about defending intelligently. You have someone like Brian Stan at that point who said, so there are two versions of it. And since we could not see it on television properly, we cannot take a call. Right. But Brian Stan, who was just Kate's side, said Ellenberger was not defending himself intelligently. Right. So there's no point in stopping the fight and then giving the fighters the time, because if you cannot defend yourself intelligently, it's done.
Right.
So it's a victory for your opponent.
That's why Masvidal hurt him pretty badly before his foot got caught in the cage.
Yeah, so that's where I say Herb Dean should have come in at that point. He should have come in between. He should have taken a decision. He should have made a call. Instead, he chose to go to NSAC. He chose to go to the regulatory affairs representative. I said, you know what? You stop the fight. It's done. It's over.
Yeah.
There's no point about discussing it right now.
Yeah.
But Ellenberger is well within his bounds to appeal it.
Yeah.
He can overturn it. I'm pretty sure he will overturn it.
Well,
so, what do you see? A rematch for Masvidal and Ellenberger?
That's a very bad matchup for Ellenberger at this point.
Yeah.
Maybe after you win a fight or two. I don't see him winning a fight or two at this point in the UFC. If you do that, you can always come back and say, hey, so I won a couple of fights. I won this rematch.
Yeah, I think Jake Ellenberger should go down like 15 to 20, ranked to the fighters who are ranked 15 to 20 or 25, win a couple of fights and get back to top 15. Probably because right now Masvidal is right there in the top 15. I see him against, if he does not get Cowboy, I certainly see him against Big Story. Like for number 10th or number 11, for number 9 or number 10. So I think that should be a good plan for Jake, not fighting with Masvidal or on the top 15, because yes, Matt Brown fight was a good fight and he hurt him in the first round, and Matt Brown is also on a decline. But still, if he wants to be in UFC, because he just got you can say he was on the edge of being cut from UFC, so he should get down, win a couple of fights and get back to top 15, and then he can move from there.
At his age, I don't see that happening. That's the only concern that I have.
So you see pink slip coming for Jake?
I see probably him having one more fight or two more fights in the UFC.
You're talking about Matt Brown,
where
right?
I see him going.
Yeah, I think he's got a bonus of a fight by getting Cowboy Cerrone. I think, of course, it was like an interesting matchup, like we've spoken about, but not really a fight that he deserved.
I see this being a tune-up fight for Cerrone. He has been so impressive in the welterweight division. I see this as a tune-up fight.
That's what I mean. So it's not really like Matt Brown deserves, but like you said, it's just a if you want to call it tune-up filler, whatever you want to call it, because of the Kelvin Gastelum, fight. So he immediately got another fight with a fighter who was, willing to fight and take him on in the thing. Well, moving on to the co-main event, Henry Cejudo versus Joseph Benavidez. Now, again, we saw, in the first round, really strong Cejudo. And the result was, of course, not what a lot of people's scorecards, including Akhilesh's, would represent. Of course, Taman also said that he didn't see it. That was the other fight. Taman didn't say anything about this one, I think. So, but you did say about the scorecard, that your
Yeah,
scorecard did reflect Cejudo
yeah,
winning. And of course, the first round point being taken away from Cejudo, as the scorecards reflected afterwards, didn't really make a difference, which is surprising even more.
yeah.
Right.
Akhilesh,
So
before we start, I just want to know what Judge Gary Topic was drinking or smoking. I mean, the other people scored 29, 28, and he scored 30, 26.
so
I
that is
mean,
where I was going to start things off. So interestingly, he gave the first round 10-9 to Benavidez, but since 1 point was deducted anyways from Cejudo, it was 10-8.
10-8. Okay.
So first thing, I do not know, and someone made a very good point about this. They said, what, after those two unintentional illegal low blows, the referees did not remember what happened before the low blows. They just remember what happened afterwards.
After, yeah. Yes,
If
that's
that
correct.
if that is the case, then okay, then I can understand. But looking at that point, if say okay, you have a John Jones fight, and this is something that I said before as well. If you have a John Jones fight, until 4 minutes he was dominating. Then he eye poked someone, because that's again something that John Jones does. Then what? You forget what happened 4 minutes into the round. What has happened?
Yeah,
And you remember just the 1
just
minute
one
that
minute.
happened afterwards. Doesn't make sense. But at the same time, when I'm talking about the fight itself, going into the fight, I was very interested in this fight, particularly even more than the main event, because Cejudo, again, Olympic level wrestler,
That's right.
but he also has a very good kickboxing background. While Benavidez, a veteran in the fight game, excellent stand up, really, really good ground game. Probably not the best of defensive ground game, but as an offensive ground game, very good. Uh, so I wanted to see if Benavidez A would be able to withstand the wrestling that Cejudo has, and B, and the thing with Cejudo is he leaves a lot of openings, and Benavidez is really good in exploiting those openings. If you look at the stand-up game, if you look at what Cejudo does, his combinations, the way, and you have seen something like that happen with Benavidez at this point, where you throw a punch. The ideal thing that you need to do is you need to take your head out of the line for a counter. But
Right,
this time
right.
around, Cejudo did that. Benavidez did not. That's what I found very interesting. Cejudo drilled Benavidez with those vicious body kicks that kind of took the wind out of Benavidez in the first round. Then obviously had those two unintentional low blows. But Benavidez also, had those counters. This is what Benavidez is really good at. He's good at counter. So the thing with counter punchers is, if, for example, if the aggressor stops, then you don't have essentially a good game plan to come forward. You look. I'll give you an example. Anderson Silva. He's a counter puncher.
Okay.
If his opponent stops being aggressive, how good is Anderson Silva then? I
Right.
mean, he's good, but he's a counter puncher essentially. So this is something that happened with Benavidez. So Cejudo took his time. He grinded Benavidez on the ground, took him down with ease, absolute ease. The first round, definitely I had to go to Cejudo, but since you had that 1 point taken out, I scored it a 9-9. Second and third round, depending on where you are on the fence, you can probably make a case for both the fighters. But I thought Cejudo had this. I thought Cejudo had this at least 27, 26, or not 27, 28, 27.
2027. But I personally felt that this fight, I mean, if you're fighting Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, but I felt that this fight should have been a 5 round fight. I personally felt that. I mean, both
Doesn't
are
make
very,
sense. So
yes,
it doesn't make sense. So if you're in the main event,
yeah,
okay, you can still make a case, but you're not in the main event. You're in the co-main. Unless
yeah,
you're fighting for a title, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
yeah, that's correct. But I mean, just if it could have been some other event or something, I would still go for a 5 round fight between Henry, because I was looking for this fight for a long time since Henry Cejudo came into UFC. And first, he fought Mighty Mouse Johnson before fighting Joseph Benavidez. So what I was previously looking for was this fight, a 5 round fight between Joseph Benavidez and Henry Cejudo. So I mean, that's my personal thought. But I mean, I am not disagreeing with the with the case that with the result, if it could have been Cejudo, I would have been happy. I am happy with Benavidez too because it was a good fight. Apart
Yeah,
from Kerry with scoring up the scorecard.
yeah, but I thought only two results would have been possible: a win for Cejudo or a draw. I was even okay with a draw because, as I said, the second and third round, depending upon where you are on the fence, where you're standing on the fence, you could make a case for Cejudo because he was aggressive, he was connecting with his combinations, he was taking Benavidez down with ease, and you can make a case for Benavidez because he was countering very well. He heard Cejudo a couple of times in the second and even in the third round. So depending upon where you stand, depending upon how you see the fight, you can make a case for both the fighters. So that if you had given round 2 for, say, Benavidez and round 3 for Cejudo, it would have been a draw, ideally.
Right.
But if you're looking at the entire aggression, you're looking at cage control, you're looking at wrestling, you're looking at if you the only thing that Benavidez had in his favor was his significant strikes. It was ideally that the volume puncher versus your really effective puncher. Benavidez was throwing a lot of volume, but Cejudo was the one who was connecting with those combinations. So as I said, depending upon where you stand on the fence, probably a draw would have been a fair result.
Yeah, I personally thought it was going to be a draw the way the fight went, but I knew it wasn't going to be because judges never, score it like we think sometimes. So I knew it was going to.
Never leave it in the hands of judges.
Yeah.
As they
So having said that, the main event. Now, what a surprise Tim Elliott turned out to be. What a surprise package. Of course, a lot of us, I didn't say anything about it, but Taman thought it was not going to go beyond the first or second round. Not many people did. What, again, the cool factor. He was having such a good time in the cage, and it's so addictive to see that. To see guys, and he reminded me of Vanata.
Right.
I forgot Vanata's
Yeah.
first name.
Lando
Vanata. Again, just having a cool time and chill and, doing his whole thing. Of course, his downfall, of course, was not taking, like his corner kept telling him, not trying to stop Johnson taking him down all the time, not trying to stop that enough. But even on the ground, he seemed to be having a good time. His ground skills were amazing, and it reminded me of, I just watched the Edo Bravo Invitational, of course, very different, but, the amount and the skill, what they were displaying on the ground, it reminded me of the final between Fernandez and Eddie, what's his name?
Eddie
Cummins? Eddie Cummins?
Cummins,
Eddie
yes.
Cummins.
Yeah.
Which was such an amazing, match of two such skillful guys. And here again, Demetrius was always trying to take side control and trying to get him to some kind of lock or something, and he was just maneuvering himself out. And then what was interesting also, he was, and I mentioned this as well, it seemed like he was slapping Demetrius a couple of times when he was, he had his, he was back on his back, and he couldn't do anything else. He would just smack him across the face like this, because he had to do something. So it was, it was like that desi thappad pap there. So I found that amusing. But what an amazing fight. Of course, he nearly finished it in the first round. And you mean, how amazing would that have been? But Demetrius is not the champion for nothing. He remained calm and got out of the situation. But, full marks to Tim for fighting the way he did. And I think even though he lost, he won a lot tonight. It's like a new star in the flyweight division.
And now, Praveen, just one thing. I think I just read that he wants to go to bantamweight.
He wants to go up to bantamweight now?
Yeah. I think he said that something like, I had a bad time cutting weight in the sauna or something. I didn't see the post fight for Tim Elliott, but yeah, on some I think MMA Weekly or MMA Fighting.com, I think I read some that he wants to move to bantamweight. I mean, gain or no gain for flyweight. I cannot say anything.
Let me just start somewhere where
Yeah.
I have read a comment somewhere which kind of described Elliott pretty well, I guess, through the entire fight, where it said Elliott looks like Dominic Cruz on meth. You know,
Actually, when you
yeah,
when you put it that way, yeah. I mean, it's
it makes a lot of sense because he wasn't just okay. So there are two important things for a fighter. One is your footwork, and the other is your movement,
yeah.
right?
One
And
thing,
is
Akhilesh, I'm sorry to interrupt you here. I just want to make one comment. I have never seen somebody who has not stopped when once he had entered the octagon, and he was constantly moving his feet like. I mean, I have never seen that stuff. So I'm sorry. Please carry on.
yeah. So I think that is where I said, you know what? I read this comment somewhere where someone said, you know what? Tim Elliott looks like a Dominic Cruz on meth.
Yeah.
Because two things. His movement was excellent. His footwork was outstanding. So Tim Elliott fought in the UFC before, and I remember a fight. I remember watching him fighting John Dodson before, and John Dodson won the fight via unanimous decision. But people kind of forgot how good Tim Elliott looked against Dodson. And Dodson is the guy, the only guy until this point that gave Demetrius Johnson any kind of fight in the flyweight division. So you know. Tim Elliott also said, coming into this fight, he said, I've studied what I had done wrong in the past, and I've made significant changes. And what he was referring to was, again, this movement. He was excellent in his movement. He was excellent in his footwork. And, as you said, once, Elliott went to the ground. And this is where Demetrius Johnson is known as one of the most well-rounded fighters in the UFC. Excellent stand-up. His speed, his precision, his power, his movement. Then when you take someone to the ground, his ability to go on the offensive or go on the defensive. This is what separates Demetrius Johnson from the rest of the flyweight division. If you look at the other flyweight contenders, they're either very good at the offensive in the offensive game, or they're very good in the defensive game. But this is where Demetrius Johnson is one of the most well-rounded fighters in the entire UFC. And as you said in the first round, Tim Elliott came out of the blocks. He shocked everyone. And the thing, the major difference is, I talked to as you know, Demetrius Johnson before the fight, and I asked him, what is the major difference that you found when you were fighting in the 135 pound division and coming now to 125? What he said was, the only difference that I see is now I'm fighting guys that are of the same size as me. Yeah. Because when he was at 135, he was a very small 135 fighting bigger 135 guys, right? But at 125, he was for the first time fighting a bigger 125er in Elliott. He had longer reach. Yeah, so he had more length, he had longer reach. That essentially gives you an advantage in the striking department. You can, although Demetrius Johnson is very hard to hit, that gives Tim Elliott a significant advantage where he can stay on the outside, make sure that Demetrius Johnson doesn't shoot and try to take him down and still control the fight. But, that I think was the biggest problem that Demetrius faced in the first round. Yeah. But the way in which Elliott controlled himself on the ground is you look at the offensive game of Demetrius Johnson and the defensive game of Tim Elliott, and I think they both cancelled each other out. Yeah. That's how good Tim Elliott was defensively. Oh. Now the way in which he countered some of those, he reversed some of those takedowns. So you talk about Tim Elliott almost finishing Demetrius Johnson off in the first round, where he almost locked in, he almost cinched in the guillotine, and then when Demetrius Johnson, again very good in defensive department, tried to roll over, he got him in the dash choke.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So and you look at Demetrius Johnson when he was on the dash choke. You see fighters doing two things. A, they try to pull themselves out, which is the worst thing that you can do as a fighter. That will that is the first thing that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu teachers tell you not to do when you're in a choke or when you're in an armbar. You cannot pull yourself out. You need to push yourself back in, create a wiggle room, shift your hips and make sure that you get out. So that is, there is a clear technique that, you need to master to get out of those chokes. And everyone thought, even I thought Demetrius Johnson was finished because he was in the guillotine for so long. And then, once you had the dash choke, I thought it was over. But the manner in which Demetrius Johnson freed himself, and then again, going into the second, third, fourth, and fifth, this is where, again, this is what separates Demetrius Johnson from the rest. He keeps changing his game plan between rounds. You do not see fighters doing that. You do not see any other fighter doing that. It's the ability of a fighter to adapt to the situation. So that is where I think Demetrius Johnson is head and shoulders above the entire division. But props to Tim Elliott. He almost got finished as well. Demetrius almost locked him in an armbar in the fourth round, if I remember. He almost cinched in a rear naked choke in the third round, if I remember. But again, as I said, Elliott was fantastic on his back. So I think the offensive game of Demetrius Johnson and the defensive game of Tim Elliott cancelled each other out.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
what was also interesting was I have to give full marks to Tim for not gassing himself out in the first round trying to finish Demetrius.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to make. Like, I thought that we all were scared that Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson was about to lose his belt. But once he was out, I was saying that he would finish him in round one or round two or round three. Probably because first his arms would have been gassed out. I thought that first he had the guillotine choke for long, and then he converted it to dart. So then again, he recovered very well in between the rounds.
Right. So there's an interesting situation where, as I said, Demetrius is not the biggest 125er. If I think Elliott was fighting a bigger 125er, then it would have been a problem. And the other thing you need to remember here is it was Demetrius who was on the top position for most of the time and controlling the fight. Right. So
Right.
Johnson was putting more pressure. So essentially, Johnson should be the first fighter to gas out. But we know he has been in a longer, 5-round fight in the UFC. He has had multiple 5-round fights. So it's not something new to Demetrius. So this is where I think even Elliott was in an advantageous position. Was he was on his back. He was essentially not putting a lot of pressure. He was just taking the pressure, but he was doing it well. His defensive guard, his defensive game, the ability of a fighter to get the opponent in those butterfly guards. You saw Demetrius. So again, I think the fourth, probably mid fourth round was when Elliott started gassing out. You could see the predicament where Demetrius, I remember, was on the top position. Then you have those BJJ. This is what Damien Maya and GSP used to do excellently, which was those. You have a half guard and a full guard, but
Okay.
you see someone like Maya who steps over, who gets into the 3/4 to the quarter. No, it isn't a full guard. It is where you step over your opponent's foot, your opponent's knee, put him down, get yourself back into the half guard. So that is a guard pass. That is one of the hardest things to do. But if you're good in your BJJ, that is something that is very advantageous in a fight. So that is what Demetrius Johnson did. So he was the one who's putting more pressure. So if anyone was going to gas out, I don't think it was Elliott necessarily at that point. Yes, he was taking all that pressure, but he was on his back for most of the second, third, and fourth rounds.
Four rounds. Yeah. That's
You know,
that's what. Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. So if the position was reversed, right? If Elliott was on top and Demetrius was on his back, you have a significantly bigger guy on top of you, which essentially means you're gonna empty your gas tank sooner. But that didn't happen. It was the reverse of it. So yeah.
Well,
Yeah. So that was that's why I thought that now in second round, okay, I thought that this would be the point where Tim Elliott gasses out. Now round three goes. Then I thought that in championship rounds, because what we remember of Tim Elliott is the previous Tim Elliott that used to fight in UFC. So that was in my mind, because I didn't get any time to catch up with the tough episodes, much of the episodes. So that's what I had a picture that now, okay, he had been into three. Now again, we saw in fourth, fifth round, like when he started doing the kung fu stances and the doing the cartwheels and all that stuff. Then we thought that, yeah, now I think it's the time that Tim is gassed out and he's just doing his tricks to stay away from Johnson.
Well,
So
the interesting thing is also is that this fight has opened up a world of possibilities for Tim, where they are going to look to match him up. With it's interesting. They could match him up with practically anybody else, and it will be an exciting fight. the fact that he took the champ 5 rounds, which not many other people have been able to do. I think only one other person has been able to do that, right? John Dodson, or was it?
John Dodson, yes.
Yeah, so the only other person
I think
is
Joseph
John Dodson,
Benavidez
who's been
one
able to
was
take him for 5 rounds. So I think that in itself is such a huge accomplishment because nobody expected it, that they can practically, unless, like you were saying, unless he moves up to bantamweight, but in flyweight, they could practically match him up with anybody else. And now there would be a lot of expectations from him, though.
I don't think expectations would play a bigger role here because, going into the fight, Tim had nothing to lose. He had everything to gain. So if he even lost, he would have still fought the champion. He would have done what practically everyone else in the flyweight division has done. You look at the top 8 guys, every one of them has already fought.
But I'm saying the way he did it, it would have been like, okay, he was overmatched and now he's going to get, maybe an opponent who's ranked between 10 to 20 in the flyweight division. But the way he did fight, it won't be surprising that he gets a top 5, top 10 opponent next.
Yeah, it's easy to get carried away at this point. I would say this because Elliott's game plan was perfect for someone like Demetrius Johnson. But if you have someone like Kyoji Horiguchi, who's completely different. If you have someone like, anyone else in the top 5, essentially, Cejudo, for example, how good of a game? So Cejudo, he relies heavily on his wrestling and kickboxing. How would that style match up with Elliott's? You look at all of these guys, Bermudez, the 3rd, 4th, 5th rank fighters, and you see how good their styles match up with. So everything depends upon the style. How good of a stylistic matchup would it be for Elliott?
Yeah.
But if he goes up against, as I said, the Cejudo, for example, I think that's a bad matchup for Elliott. You look at your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you look at how good you are off the back in a submission game, makes sense. Cejudo doesn't rely heavily on his submissions.
Yeah.
He relies heavily on his striking, on his takedown attempts and pressuring his opponent. So how good would Elliott be against someone like Cejudo? We don't know. I think it's easier to get carried away at this point because Elliott's game plan was phenomenal against Mighty Mouse. But how good would his game plan be against, say, one guy who excels at one technique?
Yeah, and one more thing, the runner-up for TUF, what do you think about Hiro Masa? I have not catch up any fights. Did you see any fights? So people say, they are also very high on, they were, not 60-40 on Hiro Masa, that Hiro Masa might win the championship. Sorry, not the championship, the TUF 24.
Yeah. Yes. So the interesting thing is, some cable operators in the United States messed up going into the TUF because UFC wanted this to be a secret, right? So when I was talking to Mighty Mouse on Wednesday, on that day itself, the cable operators messed up because they already announced the TUF finale on Saturday between Demetrius Johnson and Tim Elliott.
Yeah.
I was interested to see how Hiro Masa would have done against Demetrius Johnson, but it's some. Let me put it this way: Demetrius Johnson against any other 125-pounder in the world, I would bet on Demetrius Johnson. He can take any style. You put him against a wrestler, an Olympic level wrestler. You put him against one of the best strikers, one of the best movers in John Dodson. You put him against one of the most well-rounded fighters who relies heavily on his stand-up, but at the same time is really on the ground like Bermudez. Sorry, Benavidez. I keep mixing the names up. You put any 125-pounder against Demetrius Johnson, I would bet on Demetrius Johnson. But talking about the last episode between Hiro Masa and Tim Elliott, at this point, as I said, the biggest difference, and I watched the last episode, and this is where I thought, this Elliott is very different from the Elliott that I saw during his last UFC stint. Because as I said, his movement was completely different. His previous fights in the UFC, yes, he was moving, but he was not intelligently moving. Let me put it that way. You have fighters whose movements are good, But you have fighters who are cerebral in the way they move. Their footwork is completely different. You talk about a Dominic Cruz, for example. A fighter's movement. You have John Dodson, who moves a lot, but at the same time you have Dominic Cruz, who moves a lot, but is very scientific in his approach.
Yeah.
Right. So
Very
that
orthodox
is,
fight.
yeah, very unorthodox. So Tim Elliott is that kind of a fighter at this point. So Hiromasa, I would have loved to see how he would have done with Mighty Mouse, because that would have been another interesting matchup. I wouldn't bet against Demetrius ever, Demetrius Johnson ever. But it poses a different, a stylistic matchup for Demetrius. You're going against a guy who is very good wrestling. One of the best, at least not. He hasn't really fought. I mean, he hasn't fought in the UFC, so I don't know how he compares to the rest of the division. But from what I've seen, very good wrestling, very good ground game. At the same time, I think on his feet, he's better than Tim Elliott.
So that's the problem, or you can say if DJ is pound for pound best, and he has already cleaned out 125 division. So what is next? I mean, Joseph Benavidez 3. That is only one thing. Or what they could do is like just bring some surprise fighter like they did stuff, or they can just bring a surprise fighter from one or some other organization and match up with DJ, so that there is an interesting point of view to see that how DJ would face this fighter, right? Because right now I don't see there is any matchup for DJ.
I wouldn't be averse to saying personally, although John Dodson has moved up to 135-pound division, I would have still liked to see John Dodson Demetrius 3, because first fight it was very close. It depends upon who you ask.
Yeah.
Although it was Demetrius who.
The first fight was very obviously close, but the second one wasn't. So I think that's what maybe took away the interest of a third fight.
Yeah. Again, depends. John Dodson necessarily did not have the best of game plans. So again, during the second fight, there were a lot of personal differences brewing up between Demetrius and John Dodson. And Dodson even told me that he got carried away in the fight. Something that happened between Daniel Cormier and John Jones in the first fight. If you're being very honest, Daniel Cormier was much better than what he was against John Jones in the first their encounter. So I think similar thing happened between Demetrius and John Dodson. I think Dodson let his personal issues come in between, and that kind of clouded his judgment. As a fighter, you cannot afford to do that. But as you also said, Benavidez, one other contender that I would really want to see against Demetrius Johnson. And if this same Cejudo who turned up today would be the guy, maybe improves in the striking department, shows up against Demetrius, that would be another interesting fight. Because the first fight, it was so obvious. I mean, Cejudo was so lacking in the other departments. He was really good in his wrestling, trying to take Demetrius Johnson down. He was always looking for a takedown, but in the other departments, it was clear that it was a mismatch. So if Cejudo works on his striking department, works on his, even when you saw today, it was obvious that once he took the fighter to the ground, once he took his opponent to the ground, his offensive game wasn't that great. So if he works on that, if he tries to work on the holes in his game, I wouldn't mind seeing Cejudo face Demetrius in the future, because Demetrius is targeting Anderson Silva's record of the most number of title defenses. He already, I asked him, do you plan to go to 135? He said, it is what it is, but at this point, no. At this point, I'm looking at more challengers at 125. So if you ask me, would Demetrius go to 135? I don't think so, personally, because as you already said, he's going to fight bigger fighters, which is not good for him. If he's going to... Yeah, you saw what happened with Elliott, who's a bigger fighter at 125. And he has to fight some people like that on a constant basis. You look at someone like Uriah Faber, who walks at 145, 150 training weight, and then cuts down to 135. And on fight night is going to be much bigger. It's obviously going to be a disadvantage for Demetrius Johnson. So I think as a fighter, you really wouldn't want to do that. But as a fan, obviously, you want to see a super fight.
That's
Okay,
right.
let's move on from the flyweight division now. I think we've like dissected the flyweight division on quite a lot, and moving on from the TUF finale, some other things that have happened in the week. Of course, Conor McGregor loves leaving these little crumbs as a trail, and then allows them to grow into its own little people conjecture and make all kinds of inferences and everything themselves. Now like the whole brouhaha about him taking up a boxing license, and Mayweather keeps saying, it's much ado about nothing, and everybody's like, oh, they're gonna fight, and people are going crazy, and he says, that it's never gonna happen, even though he does admit to starting the initial rumors. So,
Yeah.
so
Before Conor McGregor showed up, before he was this big enigma that he is today, UFC was teasing, and you have Dana White, you have someone else I'm going to name, who were talking about actually taking Mayweather out, and that was Ronda Rousey. So these things do crop up. This is just a promotional stunt. I mean, I've said it before. As a fan, if you're asking for a Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor encounter, you do not understand combat sports, because that is not going to happen. If you're going into a boxing match, how you have a guy who is arguably the best in his defensive aspect of the game in Floyd Mayweather, and the most interesting part of his game is the immediate switch that he has to switch from a defensive side to an offensive side. That just happens in a matter of a split second. And if you have someone like that going up against Conor, and being an evasive fighter to Conor McGregor is not that hard. In MMA it's different. In MMA you have different kind of things that come around. It's not just your boxing that makes a difference in MMA. It's your ground game. It's how good you are in those clinches. You cannot clinch in boxing. Yeah, you can clinch for maybe 3-4 seconds. But that's it. So different, completely different worlds. Conor McGregor has this ability to get the people talking. I mean, that's how he sells pay-per-views. So I think this would lead up to a bigger, much more higher scale pay-per-view when McGregor returns and fights in the UFC. And the fact that he's going to take some time off, how do you stay relevant at this point?
Yeah, and I think it makes good business for him to keep this, the talk about this going. Let it keep floating around without saying anything himself. Let other people talk about it and grow and grow. And it becomes like a Chinese whisper almost.
Yeah, so exactly. How do you stay relevant?
Yeah.
This is one way to stay relevant. And before, when McGregor did a promotional stunt, which was saying he retired, you have his coach, Kavanaugh, who said maybe Conor will go to WWE now. So, first they threw WWE's name around, and WWE started talking about Conor McGregor. They had videos coming out where, superstars actually started challenging Conor McGregor, saying, hey, come down to WWE, we'll show you, who's better.
Yeah.
It's the same in boxing.
Yeah, I just want to make a point. Last pay-per-view, Triple H was there, and then after the pay-per-view, he commented that yes, he is that much big of a star that he can come to WWE and do a deal with what Brock Lesnar is doing right now. Or the other thing, his manager, Audi Attar, I think he tweeted something about WWE that if WWE gives him a kind of Brock Lesnar or more into money kind of deal, that he would take that. He's interested in taking that deal.
Okay, so two things here. Brock Lesnar going over to UFC has stayed, and it has opened an ugly door that people were trying to skip around. The thing is, if you're a part-timer in WWE, and this opens a door where Conor McGregor does a couple of events or shows up on a couple of pay-per-views in WWE, decides, hey, if I'm making $5 million for showing up on 3 nights, why do I have to fight? Why do I have to go through that 8-week training camp? Why do I have to keep doing all these promotional events? If I can just show up on WWE for like minimum limited number of dates, make 5 to 10 million.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, at this point, you talk about USADA, you talk about drug testing, you talk about the lack of drug testing in the WWE, how Conor McGregor can skip around it, how Brock Lesnar had skipped around it. So it opens a very ugly door. But at the same time, there is no way if you're under a UFC contract that you sign a contract with WWE.
Yeah.
Personally, I mean, I don't know the specifics. That's what I think. I think the Brock Lesnar UFC deal was a one-time deal, and WWE allowed UFC to have Brock Lesnar for their biggest pay-per-view of all time, or at least they thought it would be, because WWE wanted something in return. WWE wanted Paige Van Zandt for SummerSlam. Now that fell through. They wanted Ronda Rousey before. Now they want Conor McGregor. So I won't rule out Conor McGregor showing up on WWE TV. I think that'll happen next year. I think that'll happen for WrestleMania.
WrestleMania 33, right?
Yeah, but Conor McGregor actually working multiple dates, that is not something that I see happening. Because now, with McGregor opening a different dimension, saying, I want a stake in UFC.
Yeah.
If that, I think that is a very good possibility. I think that can happen. If you are WME IMG, okay, and if you have your biggest draw coming to you and say, you know what, either give me this deal or I quit. And if Conor McGregor quits today, he has different things to fall back on.
Here I have a point. I don't know where I was listening to, or I mean, I saw that. You see, if you are going, I mean, you definitely McGregor pay-per-views are doing really well, and he did almost half the pay-per-views what it was in 2015. But what are you doing to elevate the other pay-per-views in which you are not working? Why should you give you?
How does that make sense?
Yeah, why should he worry about the others?
Yeah.
He's building his own brand.
Because
he's actually making a business of saying, look how many more pay-per-views I'm getting than everybody else. And if he equalizes them and if he builds them up, then his worth comes down.
That's correct. But now you want a cut in the company, right? And
he wants a cut in the company for himself, for his own worth.
But he's getting a cut in the pay-per-views in which he's working. So he can get a bigger cut in the pay-per-views in which he is competing. That's fine. That's fine with the company too. But if you want a cut in the company, and so then you are one of the part owners of the company. So what are you doing other than selling your pay-per-views for which you are getting your pay-per-view cut?
That he will only do after he gets a cut in the company. Why should he do it right now? Or even have to worry or think about it? Yeah.
So let me bring a different perspective to this. Now, McGregor, much like Ronda Rousey, do you agree the fact that Ronda Rousey actually promoted the entire sport? She elevated the sport. She elevated not just the UFC but the sport in general.
Right. Yeah,
so she elevated the sport in general. Now Conor McGregor has done the same. He's transcended the sport itself. He's now a mainstream celebrity. Right. So when you're doing that, the entire reason why UFC wants someone like Conor McGregor is because they don't want the sport per se to grow. They want the company to grow. They want more eyeballs. They want more. UFC's biggest hurdle at this point till now is entering a different market, entering a new market like China, for example. They've tried for 8 years. Russia is something that they haven't even explored yet.
But they have spoken
you talk about
it.
China, mainland.
Dana has recently spoken about it as well.
No, so the point is they haven't even done that. So UFC has not even tried entering Russia at this point because of the political turmoil that they have to endure. Right? You want to go to a place like Russia, you have to skip through many hurdles. You have to talk to a lot of people, make a lot of compromises, which UFC doesn't want to do at this point. But you talk about something like mainland China, where they've been concentrating for 8 years and they haven't been able to penetrate the market. But if you have someone like Conor McGregor, it gets easier for them to enter a different market. UFC is big in a couple of countries. That's it. Even you talk about India, 1.3 billion people. UFC easily, this could be UFC's biggest market. But until now, they did not have the big name that could, do it. When you had Brock Lesnar in 2010 and 11, UFC could have done it at that point.
Yeah.
Now, who's the guy that you want to, promote to enter a different market. It is Conor McGregor.
Conor McGregor, right?
Right now,
I see your point.
and the other thing is, with the recent conference call that happened with the Mixed Martial Arts Association, the Fighters Association, and what we knew was UFC is paying about 8% of the revenue.
Right.
While in other leagues, while in other sports, it's about 50% because they have unions. Now, if the conundrum here is, these are not employees; these are independent contractors.
Yeah.
Independent contractors cannot have unions. They can have associations, which makes more sense. They can have unions, but you have to go through an entire different process, which is very complicated. But if you have an association, things get very easy for you. Now, if you have all the fighters who come together and say, hey, so we want this or this to be done so that the entire roster gets benefits. It's not just one fighter. That if you talk about UFC, yes, they have vested interest. They can talk to Jose Aldo, for example, and say, do not join this union, do not join the association, and we'll give you a bigger piece of the pie. Right? Now, all the fighters can come together and say, if it's an association, they can say, you know what, give this equal base to all the fighters, or we quit, or we go on a strike. And UFC being, these guys being independent contractors, that can happen. UFC cannot say no or something like that, because you're seeing what is happening with Mark Hunt. He was offered a fight. He said, I don't want to fight for UFC until this legal case gets solved. So that is a bigger possibility when you're in an association. Right.
No,
so
with Mark Hunt also, he said that I want a contract where the other person signs it, because it happened with him 3 times that once his fight was over, his opponent was found guilty in some drug testing or something. So what he said that I get the money what my opponent had if he gets caught abusing the drugs or something. So
that is a different topic. So what I'm saying is, if you're in association, the fighters have the option of saying, I won't fight. Right. So for a union, it doesn't work. An association, it works. Now, going back to what McGregor benefits from getting a piece of the company is, you are essentially leapfrogging that 7 to 8% of the revenue that all the fighters are sharing. Now, if you're a part of the UFC, you're going to make what UFC is making as a company. You get a certain percentage of what the turnover is, and that is what McGregor wants. He's making $5 million, fine. But if you're a part of the UFC, if UFC is making $600 million in a year, for example, now you're going to get a part of that. Apart from your shares from revenues and pay-per-view buys and gates and attendance that you get as a fighter, you're also going to make something that the company makes, which makes sense for a McGregor, right? If you're making $15 million or $20 million by getting a part of, even a small part of UFC, and you're getting $5 million, $6 million from your fight, from 6 million to 26 to 30 million, that's a leapfrog. Yeah. So that makes sense for someone like Conor McGregor.
Yeah, it makes sense for Conor McGregor. Yeah. I see your point. So
cool. I think we've exhausted this conversation with McGregor and his boxing and his wanting of shares. Let's see what happens. I guess from the UFC side, they have to know where to stop. Because in the past also they've tried to bring McGregor in check by the whole UFC 200, taking him off the card, and even now stripping him of the featherweight title. I think there's always this game being played where they don't want him to get too big, for his boots, which he's already become. But they're always trying to show him who's boss.
I don't think UFC has a say in this. I personally think UFC doesn't have a say in this, because Ronda Rousey is going to retire. John Jones, you cannot count on John Jones, because John Jones was supposed to be the golden boy of UFC.
I agree. Brock Lesnar I agree that they don't have a say in the matter, but they're trying to act like they do.
Doesn't matter. I
don't think they want to just turn over turtle, and they need to at least show that they're still in charge in some way or the other, like these small things, by taking away belt or canceling, his UFC 200 thing, by showing, listen, and I agree, at the end of the day, they won't have a choice in the matter, but they are still trying to show that they do.
So
this is a power game.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a power struggle. You had something like this with the Fertitas, but it depends. If Conor gets pissed off, and he has already made a name for himself, he's already the biggest sporting icon in combat sports.
Yeah.
After Floyd Mayweather's retirement, Conor McGregor is next. Who else can you think of bigger than Conor McGregor? No one.
No.
Right, so he's already created that image for himself. Now if he has a he falls out with the UFC management, he can always say, you know what, screw you, now I have a boxing license, now
Yeah.
I can make some 80 million, 90, $100 million with a fight,
Right.
Yeah.
or $300 million with a boxing match, or I can go to WWE, work limited dates, still make those 10 million, $20 million.
Yeah, but no, like
Or
Dana
start my own
White said,
profession.
he's still under contract to the UFC.
Doesn't matter if you quit, you're done with your contract. You cannot fight in an MMA organization.
Exactly. You cannot. No, I don't.
Yeah,
you
you
really
cannot
think
fight.
it's? I don't think it's so
Even in
easy to
boxing,
just
there's
say
a clause.
I'm going to quit. I think
Yeah.
if you're under
No, so
contract, there's
boxing
probably
license
some
is different.
provision which says you cannot fight.
Yeah, in
I
an
think
MMA in an MMA organization, you have a different license for boxing fight.
You
Boxing
do
match.
have a different license, but how is it so easy for him to just say I quit? He can't get out of his contract if he's got fights left on it. He's got to finish them first before he just says I'm going to quit. I don't think it's so easy.
No, it
One
is.
point-
If you
one
retire,
point-
you're done with your contract. You cannot fight anywhere else. What UFC's contract usually entail is, if you quit or if you retire, fine. You don't have to complete your obligatory minimum number of matches or number of matches
So you're
or number of
saying
fights.
he would retire, or this is of course we're all throwing hypothetical situations in the air, but he would say I'm going to retire. He has that option to say I retire from MMA, but go and fight boxing
Yep. he
as
does.
a leverage tool, of course, as a leverage tool.
Yeah, it does. So that's the entire point. That is working in his favor at this point. That is why the entire getting a boxing license thing is growing so much, because if something happens with the UFC, he always has the option to go to a different sport. Now, his contract doesn't extend to a different
It's like putting a gun on a table during a negotiation. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is why Conor McGregor is Conor McGregor. He was so intelligent in negotiating everything
Yeah.
that now he has pushed UFC, and that is why he can say, "Give me a stake in the company."
Yeah.
That is why he can say that. UFC doesn't have an option, as I said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just speaking of power, Praveen, Dana White recently made a statement that Conor McGregor asked for a fight with Nate Diaz. I gave him. He again asked for Nate Diaz. I gave him. Then he asked for this Eddie Alvarez fight for the lightweight title. I gave him. I mean, now they are following what he's asking for. I think there is, personally, what I feel is before the WWE IMC takeover, fighters have personal relations with the Fertitas. I mean, they were friends, or they had some personal relationships with the Fertitas. Now, after the takeover, they are seeing WWE IMG UFC as a business or as a company, so that they can take whatever they can from them.
Yeah, but if you're Conor McGregor, it makes sense for you. It doesn't matter if it's for
Yes.
McGregor would have done the same if it was the Fertitas.
So in 2014, McGregor put out a tweet saying 2-weight belt champ and shares in the company. Now at that time, it was the Fertitas who were owners, of course, and he never knew that the UFC is going to change ownership. So his plan was that all along, no matter who the owners were.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense for Conor to do that because, as I said, he has the upper hand when it comes to dealing with either the Fertitas or WMA IMG. He has the leverage that is very important for a fighter. Now, as it was revealed a couple of days ago, fighters get 7 to 8% cut off the revenues.
Yeah.
But if you're Conor McGregor and if you're getting a large chunk of those $600 million that UFC makes every year, now they may make more than that. They may make $700 or $700 million. If you even get a 5% share in the company, you get 5% of those earnings as well. So definitely makes sense for someone like Conor McGregor who has the leverage at this point.
And again, just as an aside, Mark Wahlberg has said he's willing to give some of his shares to Conor McGregor. I'm guessing when he said give, he meant sell. He didn't mean just give away.
He said, but it came with a price. You need to
Yeah,
cut
with the
it
price,
first.
exact. And he was right. See, when Conor McGregor says, "Oh, this guy has shares and that guy has shares," because they bought the shares, that's why they have them. They weren't just given away. They bought the shares. Of course. So
Yeah, so
you can't
now
really compare the two things. On what he's saying, he deserves them because these other guys have shares, but those guys bought the shares. So I think
now
that's not a right comparison.
it's up to the business sense. Now,
Yeah.
for example, if you're Mark Wahlberg, for example, you have a 5% share in the UFC with Conor McGregor in the UFC. Now, if Conor goes and the evaluation of UFC falls down for 5%, if for example you get about, if you sell your shares, you get about $200 million or $100 million without a Conor McGregor, what would that estimation be? It would be probably 50 maybe 60, not more than that. So
Yeah.
it's probably falling down half of it.
Yeah.
So it makes business sense to probably sell his share,
Yeah.
still have some stake in the UFC,
Yeah.
make Conor McGregor one of the part-time, not sorry, part-time, one of the owners or shareholders in the company. It makes sense. It makes business sense for everyone that has share in the company to get Conor in, because the more money Conor makes, the more they make.
Of
Now,
course,
if
it makes total sense for them to keep him there, but of course, they are going to keep this power struggle is going to keep going because
Yeah, that's
no one wants to lose the illusion of losing control of the company. They're not
this is what I see
to put it
happening.
in a crude manner. They're not going to just bend over for him.
yeah.
I think I don't see an option for them. That's what I'm saying. I don't see an
They
option
don't
for
want to
them.
show there's always a way of working things out, so at least the illusion of control is maintained.
The only thing at this point that UFC can do is come to a mutual agreement. If Conor says, I want 10% of the company, UFC says no. Conor says 8%. UFC says no. Conor comes to 5%.
Yeah.
UFC says fine.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that can do.
I agreed. So that's what I mean is they're going to try to maintain the illusion of control while keeping him happy and in the company. Whether
And
sorry.
yeah, I mean, what if after getting the shares, Conor McGregor say, "I quit"?
No, of
Yeah, so
course. See, no, there's always a clause. There's always a
Yeah.
built-in clause. Like there would be a lock-in clause as well. That you would have to fight for so long, and you would have to not be able to sell them for a certain period of time as well, because they would only give him shares in the company if he's fighting in the company. Otherwise, anybody, it makes absolutely no sense. No one would sign such a contract or agree to such a contract where as soon as it's signed, he'd say, "Fuck you guys, I'm off now. I'm off on a holiday." That's not going to happen.
I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think that's exactly what Conor wants.
I don't
Yeah,
see that happening at all. Why would the
Because
UFC, the only reason they would give him any shares is so he continues to make money for them. There would
Even-
definitely be a lock-in clause for how many more fights or how many years he would have to fight, how many fights, plus a lock-in period for which he wouldn't be able to sell the shares as well for that period of time.
selling the shares, yes, that's the business aspect of it, which I agree with. But it's a completely different avenue. One is a fighter contract. One would be your management contract. So both are different. You cannot say, hey, so if you're gonna buy some share in the UFC, you have to fight for a
but a
certain
business
period.
contract can also include terms of that he has to be fighting in the association, because that is why he's getting the shares. He's not getting them because, of course, he is a really good businessman. I was going to say because he's not this really good businessman. He is a really good businessman, but he's getting shares because of who he is as a fighter. If he stops to be that, why would they give him shares? I 100% see there being a clause, if and when it happens, of him having to fight for a certain number of years and a lock-in period. However that happens, I don't think we're the legal eagles where we can say that they will be able to do this or that. But I 100% see that happening. Otherwise, the giving of a share of the company is meaningless without him continuing to fight.
Yes,
Or
but
or
that makes sense. But the only thing is, it doesn't have a precedence. So we do not know. I mean, we do not know the legal bounds. You cannot, as
Well,
far as I
giving
know, you have a
shares doesn't
fighter
have a
contract.
precedence in the UFC.
Yeah. So see, now the thing is, you have one contract, which is a fighter contract. So how this fight business works is you have a fighter contract, then you have a bout contract, which you need to sign before a fight. But
Yeah.
that's it. Now this is a completely different avenue where a fighter wants to have a part of the company itself. So that comes down to the business side of things. I don't think it is possible because it would be a conflict of interest on Conor McGregor's
No,
part, on
because he's
UFC's
not
part.
buying it. See, it might be a business contract, but he's not buying the shares.
Because
If
he's
if,
buying
it,
the
if
shares.
he
That's
was
what he
buying
wants.
the shares, it becomes a different contract. They are giving him that share, or hypothetically, they would be giving it to him because of him fighting in the company.
I don't think I don't think that that is what Conor McGregor is implying at this point. I think he wants to buy a share because no company wants to give a percentage of the
Okay, I'll
company
tell
to
you
the
what.
fighter.
If that is what he's implying, if he is talking about buying a share, then you are right. Then they're two different things.
Yeah,
But
because
so far, he has not mentioned the word buy. I have not heard the words buy come through his mouth. He has said give. He has implied very clearly that he deserves a certain share of the company because of what he has brought to the table. He has never used the word ki I am willing to buy a percentage. If he was willing to pay, same amount as somebody else or what it's worth, then I think it becomes a totally different ball game. But I don't think that's what's happening here. That's what I'm trying to
yeah,
say.
yeah, but I don't think UFC is in a position where they can give percentage of the shares because no one person owns the entire percentage of the
Well,
shares.
that is what I was trying to say. That this
Yeah,
is what I
so
was trying to
that
say.
makes
or
that is impossible, almost impossible, unless someone says, you know what, I'm gonna let go of $100 million or $50 million just to keep Conor McGregor in the UFC. Why would anyone do that?
Well, that is what I was trying to say. But of course, you guys have had a different opinion. So coming back to the same page, we are on the same page. The only thing we are saying is you guys are saying they would be willing, he would have to buy it. And that's what he's trying to imply. What I'm trying to imply is he has never said, or at least never implied, that he wants to buy a share. He has always implied that he deserves a share. Now, let me just give you an example of why he's saying that. If you have an employee who is really worth a lot to you, or has worked a certain number of years in the company, sometimes as an incentive, you give him a certain number of shares in the company with a lock-in period, with the caveat that he has to be in the company for a certain number of years and as well can't sell it for that. They don't sell him those shares. So the same way, I think that is what Conor McGregor is trying to imply, that I deserve this because I have built the company, I am worth so much to the company, so I deserve a share in the company as well.
But the main difference here is, I'll tell you why this cannot happen. Because
I'm
Conor
not saying
McGregor
it's
is
going to
not an
happen.
employee.
You are saying it's
No,
going
no.
to happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying
bringing
that
the
is what he's,
technicality.
according to me, is implying. That's what I'm saying.
I'm bringing the technicality aspect in here. Conor McGregor is not an employee of the UFC. He's an independent contractor.
Technically,
So,
yes. But
so
he is
as
saying
an
that I
independent
have made the
contractor,
UFC what it is. I'm a two-weight champ. I have made it. The pay-per-views. You are getting this amount of pay-per-views because of me. Everything else is just technical jargon.
yes, but being an independent contractor is very different from being an employee. That is
See,
where
we're
the
getting
fighters
caught
do
up
not
in
have the
technical
power.
jargon now. What he's implying is you are making so much money and you have made so much money because of me. You have got this valuation because of me. And therefore, I deserve.
Now, what UFC can do is they can say, what, either take this deal or, do whatever you want. Because at this point, if Conor, okay, so if UFC and Conor reach a stalemate and both cannot come to an agreement, and Conor says, fine, I retire from MMA, I'm not going to fight in the UFC anymore. What would Conor do next? He will not obviously, go to a fight fight against Floyd Mayweather in a boxing match. That will not happen. What Conor is doing right now is he's trying to stack the odds against the UFC.
Yeah,
He's trying to play the mind games.
of course, without a doubt.
Just getting the leverage on UFC to get a better deal.
Now,
Of course,
yeah,
but
now what?
see, now this is what I'm saying. He is trying to get a better deal. It's not like he's trying to bring down the prices of the shares, right? That he'll get a better deal for buying them. According to me, his whole inference has been that he deserves a certain share in the company because of what he brings to the table. And that is why he's doing all of these things to get leverage for that.
So the thing we need to remember is Conor is a businessman. As a businessman, you know that you cannot get free shares of a company that
No,
the
it's
company
not
that's
free. That's why I just gave you the example of a good employee in a company who works, does something for the company, brings something to the company, brings something to the table, and therefore is given a share with a lock-in period of how long he has to keep working and a lock-in period of how long he cannot sell.
Sell the shares.
So basically, at that point, what UFC has is they have complete control over Conor McGregor. They have complete. Conor cannot say, "I will not come to a press conference anymore," because having a vested interest in a company would mean he has to be vested in what he has to do. He
And
cannot
that is
say
what
no.
he is saying. He is saying, I want to be vested even more. I have given my heart and soul. Whenever you guys have said fight, I have fought. Whenever somebody else has dropped out, I have still fought. No matter who is in front of me, I have fought and fought. And therefore, my interest has always been in the company. And therefore, I deserve, because I want to stay and increase my interest in the company. According to me, that is the subtext of what he's saying.
What I believe is, he's trying to broker a deal where UFC would lower down their price for the shares, where Conor buy those shares, become a part of what the revenue UFC is making, because he needs to spend what 50 million to get a share, a proper share where he can make some money when the revenues come in. I think that is where he's trying to lower the valuation for himself so that he can broker a better deal, buy the shares, become an integral part of the company, and say, you know what, I'm done fighting.
Okay.
What else can Conor McGregor do at this point? Fighting.
I'll say I agree to disagree with you. And we shall see how it plays out.
So,
One thing what he may do is like, okay, I may or may not participate in any competition, but I'll promote. If you want to explore any new territory, I'll go there. I'll promote the company. I'll be your brand ambassador. I'll do whatever you say. Give me the share.
Yeah, so entering a different market takes years. That automatically does not increase the valuation of a company. Now, the interesting point is, look, Conor has fought who's who in 145 and 155, right? He comes back. Who is he going to fight next? He has two valid fights that he's going to draw. One, his rematch with Jose Aldo. Probably at 155, go against Khabib if they build it, and if Khabib goes to Russia at that point, open a different market so that UFC can enter Russia. That makes sense. But after that, who do you think Conor can fight at 145 and 155? Is he even going to go back to 145? I don't think so.
He's not going to go back to 145. The reason being, Jose said that if he wants to fight Conor, he'll fight at 155. And anyways, he said that he wants to move up to 155.
I don't see. Now here's the situation. Jose, he can move to 155, but what's on the line? Is Conor going to defend his title against Jose Aldo? No, because Jose Aldo has to defend his belt first. Right. So even if Jose Aldo, let's say Jose moves to 155, okay, they both fight. What other money fight do you have for Conor McGregor? What other money fight can you see for Conor McGregor?
Just as an aside,
just Khabib.
Akhilesh, your trimmed beard looks very nice. I only noticed it right now. But something again, totally aside, this is the business sense of Conor McGregor, that he's got everybody, including us in India, talking about what he plans on doing next and his shares and everything. We've been talking about it for a fucking hour, and he's sitting in Dublin chilling with his beer, enjoying his time off. Of course, he's still probably working out and everything, but he's having a good time. And here we are speculating about everything, and he's sitting there very comfortably knowing what he's about to do next, and letting out these little pieces of information here and there, and toying with everybody. And the minute he does a little something, Twitter and social media, everybody goes fucking crazy.
Blows up. Yeah.
So
all
what
blows
I
up.
would say is maybe we need to chill and go back to our beers as well and
Yeah.
see what he does next.
Yeah.
You know?
Speaking of retirement, Tito Ortiz said that fight against Chael Sonnen would be his last fight. So,
Yes.
so let's see what happens. I hope Bellator gets some deal in TV. Steve Coker said, I think with Akhilesh, you spoke to Scott Coker. He said that Viacom is already present in India, so he's looking for TV deal
Yeah, well,
there.
just to let everybody
So
know, we're
we
going to
hope-
try to bring him on the show.
Yeah, right.
So what I was told was they are in talks. They are in talks with a broadcasting partner. I think they have reached a breakthrough point because I was told, you know what, and this wasn't told to me by Scott himself, but representative, a Bellator PR, that said, you know what, Scott has a big announcement that he's gonna unveil pretty soon. I was not given a definite time. I was not given a timeline where that would happen, but I think a deal is pretty close to getting resolved. Pretty sure 2017 is when you have two different promotions trying to enter India. One would be a Bellator MMA through a television deal, but I think one championship would want to enter India through some events because they have done that in China, they've done that in major parts of Asia. But until you tap the potential that India has, it's a waste of a massive market which has about what 70, 80. Yeah, those kind of the demographic that the companies want. You're 18 to 35. You are missing on a huge market in India.
Yeah. And
we have
actually, I don't think anybody realizes how big the market actually is and how big people actually are tuned to, MMA. There's a lot of fans out there, much more than we realize. And we at the MMA India show, of course, have seen it as well with the amount of followers and views we have accumulated in the last 3 to 4 months by bringing everybody onto this one platform. And, it's just growing. There is a very large market out there, especially in the north, in the northeast, Mumbai, Maharashtra, and some places in the south as well, especially Kerala. So there's a huge market out there, and it's only going to get bigger.
Yeah, I don't think the companies do not understand the market itself. I think they are kind of jittery when it comes to entering a new market, an untapped market like India. If you want to go to China, even if you want to go to Russia, let's talk about Russia itself. Russia, you have promotions, you have MMA promotions in Russia, so you know for a fact that there's a good market, right? It's easy to get into Russia, rather. But when it comes down to India, it's a completely unknown entity. UFC tried to come to India in 2014. I was monitoring it closely because I knew the officials at that point. I knew two of them came down to India. I knew at that point that they were in Bombay and they were in Delhi, and a deal was close to happening. They were close to bringing a live event to Delhi, but at the last minute, at the 11th hour, something happened and the entire deal broke down. And UFC said, you know what, India is not a country that probably is ready for us to come. Maybe that, they said it was maybe a political reason. Something happened with the stadium itself. I do not know, to be honest, the entire situation. But yeah, I mean, the organizations know that India is an untapped market. The only thing I think they're a little jittery about is because it's an unproven market.
Yeah, I agree.
You have SFL. How well did SFL do?
Yeah, that's right. But also
I think there are problems with the way SFL. A lot of people say this, how SFL conducted itself, and they are coming, of course, back into the market now. I cannot say for sure with new management, but that is kind of what I've heard. And
with new management, yes.
Yeah, so they have come back into the market. Let's see how they do. They're doing some auditions and everything, I think, for fighters as well. Of course, the first one had a lot of uh, hope attached to it, and I think it could have grown. But I think there were some problems not connected with the sport as such, more to do with the way it was managed.
Yeah. So the mismanagement was huge, massive. I mean, the difference
I
in
never said
viewership.
that. You did. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah. I
Okay.
think let's call
I mean,
a spade. Everybody knows it was mismanaged. There's nothing
Yeah.
to hide in that. Everybody knows that. And I think the people involved should realize that as well.
yeah, but again, the point here is India is such a big, mysterious market. It's still no one has found a clear formula where they can say, what, this is what we have to do to promote the sport in India or grow in India, because they tried doing the entertainment plus sport aspect of it, where they brought in Bollywood and meshed it up with the sport itself, like what they did with IPL. IPL was a massive success, but SFL was not,
Yeah.
because there's only certain amount of entertainment that you can bring in.
Yeah.
It's all about the sport.
Yeah.
That is where UFC was so successful, at least in the initial years. They took 10 years to establish themselves.
And this is something, touching upon Brave now. They of course had a press conference. We spoke about it. Coming into the market in India, and this is something I spoke about to some of the people involved. That personally, I don't think they should go down the same brand ambassador film and this and that route. I feel the UFC route of building the fighters, that is the way to go. Build the fighters, build their names. Of course, the good fighters, the fighters who deserve it. Let people know who they are, rather than try to promote the sport. Usually, like the usual. Okay, you get a film brand ambassador, and I'm not trying to talk down my own, so to speak, but for this, the sport, talking on behalf of the sport, we have to think about promoting the fighters and the sport itself by promoting the sport, rather than just a film face, putting it in front and say, see the sport because of this actor attached to it. And then the usual, you make leagues in different cities and this and that, which is the usual way sport has been being promoted in our country, is through the league route. Now that, I don't think, is necessarily how MMA should work in our country.
Yeah, but
I was
that is
thinking. Yeah, I was thinking like this, like Sharat Saxena, he was into boxing, some national level boxing, and he is into thin line also. So he might have some interest into MMA or some
In
combat
fact,
sport.
I've worked with him quite a few times,
Yeah.
and he's a great guy, and he's fucking huge and built.
Yeah, he's freaking huge. He's huge
Yeah.
guy. But that's why I said, I mean, I've been following Sharat Saxena. He was national champion in boxing or national level competitor.
That
So
I'm not sure.
so but he had some involvement in combat sports.
Yeah, but
So
what I'm
people like
trying to
that-
say is, why do you need to associate with any film people unless it's just calling them to the to the arena, stadium, whatever you want to call it, to see the matches, like to see the fights, like they do in the UFC. Of course, it does bring a lot of eyeballs to the sport, in terms of like when Salman was in Sultan. But how many people still, even despite that movie, know what MMA is, or MMA stands for, or what the sport is about? Because you're still not promoting the sport and and putting the sport out there and the fighters.
But yeah, this is where I say India is a big unknown. You do not have a clear blueprint.
Yeah,
But
you don't.
I see a way through it. I do, because okay, let's see what let's say the growth of boxing in India, because of one superstar, because of Vijayendra Singh, and even because of Mary Kom. So those one or two people make all the difference.
Yeah, but they are actually they are the actual boxers. It's not because of some actor who's put his face on, for boxing and telling everybody to come watch boxing. It's because of what they have achieved themselves, and because they are the ones marketing the sport themselves.
Because but Vijayendra was in movies. Vijayendra is also a movie star. You cannot say Vijayendra is not a movie star as well.
He did one movie, and with all due respect to him, it didn't do very well. So I don't think people necessarily see him as a movie star.
But at the same time, his first boxing match. If you saw the first boxing match, they were cricketers, they were film stars.
But that's what I'm saying. That's fine. That's the way to promote it, is to invite them to the actual fights.
Yes, but that is because people already knew about Vijayendra Singh. That's what I'm trying to
he's
imply.
an Olympic champion. Of course they know. He was all,
so you need someone. Yeah, you need someone like that in MMA. So India at this point that's what I'm saying. There's no blueprint. There's no clear path. It all depends on how you understand the market. I do not think any company till now understands India as a market. I think they see India as this. I think if you talk about international organizations, I think they correlate India with Bollywood.
Yeah.
I think they always think about, even if you talk about WWE, if you have WWE superstars to India, how do they go and promote WWE? They talk to movie stars, they go and do events with movie stars. I think that is the biggest misconception that international organizations have.
Yeah.
When you hear India abroad, you immediately think about Bollywood. That is the biggest misconception here. I think you need to have certain star power to kind of drag in more eyeballs, but you need to put more emphasis on the product rather than who you're bringing in. I think that is where SFL kind of faltered in the first attempt, because they were not bringing in they were not building stars. They were already, they were bringing already established stars. The Bob Thompsons, the Bob Sapps, the Bobby Lashleys, the international fighters. So who, let's be very honest, on a marketable scale, on a promotional scale, who has SFL built? Nobody. You go to a casual fan who watches UFC now and then. Ask him about an Indian MMA fighter. I'm pretty sure they won't be able to name at least one Indian fighter.
I agree. And what's surprising is Michael Venom Page fought in the SFL, and not many people know about that.
Yeah, but at that point, to be fair,
he wasn't the Michael Venom Page, of course.
Yeah, he wasn't big. He was just starting off. He had people on the regional scene knew about him because of his point fighting background. But he wasn't that big of a name. You had even Luke Rockhold came to India to commentate. He was in the corner of his teammate.
SFL?
Yeah, Rockhold was in India for an event. So even Josh Barnett is probably going to come to India to commentate on SFL fights. So you have the names, but what are you doing with them? Are you promoting them? Yeah. That's the whole point. As a fighter, you need to promote the fighters. Yeah. You do not. You should not call fans into the arena because there's a Bipasha Basu sitting in the first row. Yeah. You need to call fans inside the arena because you get to see Luke Rockhold. That's the entire point. And I think the audience has matured enough for that to happen.
Yeah.
But no one clearly understands how to promote the sport in India. I don't think SFL understood even. I need to see what happens in January because I'm interested to see how they promote the sport.
Yeah.
I don't know if any promotion has really understood the question mark that is the Indian market.
Yeah, well, let's wait and see. They've put together some interesting videos, which are getting some traction, but not made a big enough dent. And again, I think because they're still figuring out, like you said, how to market and reach out, to the fans. But anyway, I guess everyone will find their own path. That's up to them. Having said that, I think we've spoken quite a lot. And it's time for us to say Alvida. So
yes.
Thank you.
I think we've spoken more about the general issues rather than the tier finale.
Yeah.
And if you can just sum up MM AAA in short, what would you say, Akhilesh?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a big unknown at this point because there are two important questions that was put in front of John. One was who is funding the association? He's yeah, he skipped through the question. He said this external funding that is coming in, but who's doing it? Why are they doing it? If it is for the fighters, it makes sense for the fighters or one big fighter to put in the money. But why would an external source put in the money, fund this association? What gain do they have?
Yeah.
Right. So that is one. Second thing that the more number of fighters say is you have 5 people, you have 5 big names on board, which is good. But how do you know that the decisions they take are in the best interest of all the fighters combined? So these are two important questions that haven't been answered yet. Now you have.
I think they said that this was specifically to UFC, not each and every fighter combined.
I mean, specifically, you're talking about 600 fighters on the UFC roster. Right. So how do you know that? And the other thing is, one of the guys that is on the board, Jodson Pierre, is not with the UFC anymore. So how do you know that the decisions that these guys take is in the best interest of all the fighters in the UFC? If there's a guy on board who is not a UFC employee anymore or an independent contractor that is UFC anymore, how do you know the decision he's taking is in the best interest of all the fighters?
But you cannot. UFC said that it's back and forth. UFC said he has a contract with UFC.
No. So
he do not have any contract with contract with UFC to fight. I mean, still.
No. I putting my own experiences across. I know for a fact that what George is saying right now is valid. He is not under contract with UFC anymore. It depends because you have a specific clause in a fight contract which says if you fail to give a fight to this person for a number of months, then he's free to leave. That is all that is there in every contract. The only thing is fighters are not aware of the clause. Now George has one of the best lawyers under him.
Right.
Obviously, right. He's taken a closer look at his contract and it's null and void at this point.
But
again, the main question is
do the whole to circumvent that. They did do the whole. Oh, he was offered a Robbie Lawler fight, but he didn't accept it.
Right.
Doesn't matter until and unless he fought. It doesn't matter. It's all ifs and buts and who and stuff like that.
If we look at that way, then the easiest way for a fighter to get out of his contract is not accept a fight for some time and let it just become null and void.
Also, he said, "I am retired.
Yes, but
I'm not accepting any fight." So why would a promoter would give a fight to the fighter who has already said, "I'm retired"?
So Conor McGregor said he was retired.
Yeah, he said he was retired, but then again he said. Then again, next day he said, "No, I'm not retired." He sent some tweet, something like that.
No, so the entire point is contracts. GSP. The clause was inserted recently. It was not his old contract. Now, again, the interesting point is why did GSP go back to UFC when he said he's going to come back to MMA? Because he was still under contract. He said he quit. He said he retired. But if you're coming out of retirement, you cannot go to Bellator. You need to come back to UFC. But, you have a place, you have a clause where you can put additional clauses in your existing contract. That is what GSP did. Right? So that is a new contract. GSP said, okay, let's add these couple of clauses which say, if you do not get me a fight in the next 1 year, then I am an independent, then I'm, a free agent. Then I'm no longer under your contract. So that is what GSP is saying. He's not saying that, if I say I quit or I retire, the contract is null and void. It's not.
Okay, Taman, you had to fucking open up a can of worms again. Just as I was saying goodbye. This is a never-ending conversation. So let's see how it plays out and what happens to it. For now, let's say goodbye. And thank you, Akhilesh, and thank you, Taman. And thank you to everybody who was tuning in. And that's it for today's episode of the MMA India Show. See you soon.